This is the One Piece Podcast, episode 440 for the week of Monday, October 17th, 2016. My name is Zach.
And my name is Ed.
On today's show, we have our anime recap host and also editorial writer for ANN and the One Piece Podcast. Sam Leach is with us. Hey, Sam.
How's it going, you guys? Yuri on Ice has changed the world.
So I've heard. It's better than that other show.
Keijo? Are you talking about Keijo, the butt show?
I know it has 8 exclamation points. That's all I know.
Yeah.
Pretty sure you made all of those words up.
So we have a pretty cool podcast today. From Matsuricon, we have our Arcs of Consequence panel. So if you didn't want to listen to all 6 hours of our Arcs of Consequence, this boils it down in around 2 hours. And we also have a very different crew than joined us on the original Arcs of Consequence. We have Sam, you're there. We also have Bryan, Jill. Am I missing anyone else? I mean, we also have, Alex, Steve, Ed, and myself. But that's a lot of fun. Really good discussion. So very excited to get into that.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear this again because I remember it being a really good conversation.
Yeah. It was an intimate conversation, I'll put it that way. And we also have our anime recap this week. Sam, you want to tell us a little bit about what we're doing there?
Oh, that will be me and Ed going through episode 760. Kind of same old. The usual anime recap experience, I guess.
It's a good episode this week.
It is.
I was down on most of last week's content except for the last half. Yeah, but this week was very consistent.
I need to catch up. I'm going to use this week as catch up, and then
I'm actually caught up now. This is great.
Yeah. And we also have some cool little announcements at the top of the show. We are happy. ACH was supposed to be on this episode, but since there was no manga this week, he will be on right before Election Day to kind of make you forget that it's Election Day. So,
and also, he isn't able to be on between now and then because he is going to be in Japan touring with New Japan Pro Wrestling as part of the Super Junior Tag Tournament. And I think his first match for that is October 21st against the Young Bucks. So check that out if you have New Japan World streaming service. Check it out.
Yeah, and you told me that, and I had completely forgotten. So I'm sure he'll pick up some One Piece swag while he's over there, or at least have some good stories in general to tell us from that. So he's going to be on Monday, November 7th. He's going to be on the full episode, as far as I know. I think he's going to be doing the manga and everything as well. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Tell your friends, tell your family to listen to the One Piece podcast on November 7th.
Speaking of Election Day, November 8th is also the release date of One Piece Season 8 Voyage 4, the next set for the One Piece release in America. And let's see, Voyage 5 is set to release December 13th. And as we found out last week, we are getting One Piece Film Gold January 10th to 17th of next year, released in theaters. So
there are so many good reasons to count down to the end of this election, and those are very good reasons. We also will have Funimation's Godswill Ugwa. He'll be on next week, where we'll also be going through manga chapter 843 and anime episode 761. Very excited to go through those. Very interested to see what happens next in the manga. And we were going to be doing our next Matsuricon panel the week after, but I don't think there's going to be a break. So we'll have a good normal episode for you for Halloween. That's going to be a lot of fun as well. Since it's Election Day, we said we'd be putting up, some more, election-related editorials, and we did not disappoint. Jill, I don't really think it's at all election-related.
It's political. It is political.
Yeah. Jill has a new article out about kind of the mixed relationship that Oda has with the LGBT plus community, and it's a really interesting article. Please check that out. She published that on the 12th. And we also have an article, I think I mentioned this a few days ago, from Ashwin about just gender roles in One Piece and fighting, more as it concerned the recent chapter in which a woman did get beaten. So you can check that editorial out from Ashwin. That was published on October 4th. Those are both out from OnePiecePodcast.com. And on a less On less political notes, Eden has published her cosplay editorial for becoming Luffy, so check that out on the site as well. And finally, I want to mention our store is open. We don't talk about this enough. You could get cool One Piece podcast swag by going to our Redbubble store. You just go to onepiecepodcast.com. It's at the top menu. You could check it out at the top of the site. And we have, our minimalist logo, our current logo, our old logo, our alternative ones, our Banana Me, which I think we've discussed kind of recently on the podcast as well. So please check that all out. I think that's everything, though. So you guys ready to talk about some anime?
Sure.
This is the anime recap for episode 760, The Exterminated Capital. The Twirly Hat crew arrive. The title card this week begins at around 6 minutes on the nose.
Little less time than the last couple.
Yeah, a little less than the last few. Good episodes, just right off the bat.
Yeah, it's a lot of my problems with the things that were going on for most of the last two episodes really weren't present so much this week.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was on model. The animation looked very fluid, especially at the beginning fight scenes, and it's good pacing too.
So the screenplay this week is by Hitoshi Tanaka. Episode director and storyboard artist is Tetsuya Endo, and the animation director is Shigefumi Shingaki.
Hey,
who you guys interviewed for OPP Japan, right?
Right.
Yeah,
that was Greg and Zach, but I wish I was
Greg and Zach, yeah. But collectively, us.
Yes, I like to think of us as the royal we.
Yeah, exactly. The episode opens with the Straw Hats in the present day continuing to listen to Wanda's story as the rest of the Minxes, such as like Dogstorm and Shishilian, are fast asleep. Mm-hmm. The story continues with
this narrative device wouldn't necessarily work all the time, but for this flashback, I think it does kind of make sense because I do like the returning to Wanda telling the story, and which actually provides a very poignant moment about halfway through the episode, which we'll get to.
Yeah, I agree. The story continues with Cat Viper fighting Jack, and the action is very fun and well paced. Like I don't know if I entirely agree that the animation is like fluid and completely on model all the time, but this is the kind of pacing that I expect from a One Piece fight. Basically, this is the thing that I feel like was missing in the last couple.
Well, and also my some of my gripes with the anime is that it does like shaky cam and also quick cuts and close-ups during fights, which I don't care for as much. Mm-hmm. I think it's very much a sort of late 90s, early 2000s sort of movie style of fighting where there's quick cutting and lots of, you don't get to see the entire fight, whereas something like maybe in like an older kung fu movie you'd see it from further distance because people were actually able to choreograph these fights and make them look good from a distance, as opposed to needing to use quick cuts to really cover up the fact that there isn't any fight choreography. And I think that like this sort of goes back to that older style of showing the whole fight and showing how like the fight is working as a battle or as combat. I like how it looks as combat.
I agree 1000%. That's like one of my biggest gripes with movies, and one of the reasons why I like anime so much is that there's less of that. So the story goes on, and we see that the day actually does arrive again. So there's actually a few night and days during this fight where Cat Viper's crew and Dogstorm's crew have to like swap out and keep fighting, meaning that Jack and his crew basically have to stay on the offensive at all times, whereas the Minks get to take breaks and switch out and all that.
It was 4 whole days and nights, right? Because it was the 5th day that we get to, right?
Yeah, and I had forgotten that was how it went down in the manga. So that's like that really. You try to imagine like fighting for that long, and it just feels exhausting to think about.
They do make the point of like the shifts work for the Minks, and they were able to take out all of Jack's men, but they were never able to take Jack down. So, and they kept getting reinforcements coming from the sea. It was it kept coming.
So, unfortunately, the fight takes a turn for the worse when a gas weapon invented by our very own Caesar Clown comes into the fight and takes out the Minx. And Luffy is very angry to hear that name. This brings us back into the present again, and this is the Wanda's crying face that
And,
you were
no,
talking about.
and also she licks Tommy's arm.
I
It's a nice,
yeah, I have that in my notes. Like she licks Nami's arm like a good girlfriend.
yeah.
Um,
They do, and that does continue from last episode where I thought they do a good job of making her less anthropomorphized and her face being very, very dog-like.
very dog-like, very yeah, just something very evocative about her face during this scene. So the way that the fight goes down is that the minks are taken out by the gas and are eventually crucified and tied up on wooden stakes and tortured.
Yep.
By Jack and his men.
That was a really brutal scene, actually. They did a pretty good job with that, showing the way the gas spread over the country in the animation, and the way they cut away from like him like chopping off their limbs, like just cutting right at that point. I think that was a good choice.
So eventually, Jack has to leave because he has been given orders to save Doflamingo from the Navy, basically, because Luffy and Law took him down and.
Were they orders, or was it like
the
way they imply it is like he has a personal relationship with Doflamingo where he would do that, but maybe he had orders from Kaido. I'm not sure.
Oh,
because like where was Kaido? Wasn't Kaido like AWOL at this point? Wasn't he going up to the island, the Sky Island?
I don't actually know. I was never under the impression that Jack and Doflamingo necessarily had a relationship, but.
That was the impression that I got from the way this was subtitled on Crunchyroll, was that like Jack and Doflamingo had some sort of relationship to each other, but maybe I was just reading that wrong.
I don't know. I can't remember. I may have missed that that line or whatever. So basically, he leaves, and Dogstorm wakes up in the present day enough to comment that he recognizes that this is thanks to the Straw Hats and their fight on Dressrosa. That Jack was able to leave and allow the minks to be saved by. And this brings us to the story of the Sanji's half of the Straw Hats, the Twirly Hat crew, and their story arriving on Zou for the first time, and they're like looking up at the giant elephant, being amazed, just as Luffy and friends were when they first encountered it. They use Caesar as like a hot air balloon to lift them up.
I like that in the subtitles they make than like the rest of the crew. Like, because he's a bad guy, he can talk that way. He calls them buttholes.
Yeah, I did laugh at that.
Makes sense when the bad guy can be more vulgar.
So they arrive at the top, and this is when they meet just a mysterious squirrel girl who we know as Tristan. And just a pair of Kaido's men, Sheepshead and Jim Rummy, come crashing in on their alligator.
And I loved Nami's reasoning. I loved it in the manga too, but it really conveys just as well in the anime of oh, she's being chased. She's a victim. Oh, he must be the bad guy. Like,
exactly.
It works just as well.
Then I heard there's some like really cool music as Brook confronts Sheepshead and Jim Rummy, and the two of them, the two villains, they like actually get in this little argument over whether it matters whether they know why a skeleton is alive and talking or not.
It really does emphasize in the anime even more so than the manga how bumbling those two are.
Yeah,
it's great. Like in you can really see the Kamina of it all from Sheepshead just being sort of over the top with his acting. I like that.
So Brook is able to basically freeze the ground and cause Jim Rummy and Sheepshead to crash. And this is when the squirrel girl runs away. Tristan runs away.
Basic Looney Tunes stuff.
Yeah. And Nami's like, oh, okay, well, obviously we gotta follow her, even though she doesn't seem to like us that much.
Maybe she doesn't like us. Let's chase her. That's a good idea.
Yeah, exactly. They come across the destroyed city fresh from Jack's devastation. Caesar notes that this was his weapon being used, and he seems kind of annoyed that he's not very good at killing people.
Well, it's not stated explicitly, but it's more of implied that he's like, it didn't work, huh? Yeah. And I don't know if the other characters picked up on it, but it's kind of obvious to the viewer.
Yeah. And this is when we meet a leopard mink on the ground who introduces himself as Pedro, and he's trying to tell the crew about Cat Viper and Dogstorm and how they are in most desperate need of some medical care and being saved because they're now like on the brink of death, and we see for the first time that they are in fact each missing an arm and a leg. Cat Viper's missing an arm, Dogstorm's missing a leg. Put them together, they'd be like Edward Elric, basically. And that brings us to the end of the episode. General thoughts, Ed?
As I said at the top of the segment, I really enjoyed this week's episode. Like, I said last week, if every entrance could be like the Cat Viper thing at the end of last week's episode, I'd be happy. But even if, I realize it's a little unrealistic. But if every episode could be like this, decently paced, animation generally fluid and on model, and with good music and good voice acting, I think I'd be happy with the anime. But it's really only this way. It's not always this way, so I get annoyed.
Right.
But I do continue to be impressed. Especially, I liked Cat Viper a lot in this episode, and I continue to really enjoy Sheepshead. I enjoy that actor generally, and he is a high spot being so being so ridiculous and like being a fool. I like it.
Yeah, I enjoy this episode a lot as well. This is I agree. This is closer to how I wish One Piece could be more frequently, and it's very much a direction thing. I think like it's about how the individual scenes are paced. It's about just like music choices and like whether or not because like I don't think this is like a super oppressive episode. Like I don't think it looks awesome or anything, but it's still engaging. Like even though it's regular One Piece, it's a regular One Piece pacing. It's still like
it reflects like an attention to detail, even in weekly anime. This does reflect, I think, an attention to detail.
Yeah, it feels like feels like the direction is hands on instead of autopilot, which is usually when I get kind of miffy with the anime. Also,
let's hope it continues.
Yeah, and I just also want to say that it also helps that there's a good variety of content in this episode between like the action in the first half, like the stuff in the present, and then the Twirly Hat crew. So
right,
yeah. So that's a good episode all around. Are you ready to move on to the next segment?
Sure am.
All right, let's go.
Three, start. Two,
1.
This is the One Piece Podcast, Arcs of Consequence, live from Matsuricon. Hey, everyone.
So many people are here. This is great, Zach.
Yes, the entire place is filled. It's beyond capacity, actually. There's just lines outside. My name is Zach.
And my name is Ed.
And my name is Alex.
And on the show today, we have our editorial writer, Sam.
Oh, because I'm holding the mic.
Yes, you are.
Hi, guys. How's it going?
Good. How's it going with you?
It's going all right.
How's it going?
I'm a little high on energy right now.
Okay, good. Jill.
Well, I'm not high. I don't know what Sam's doing. I'm doing great.
And we have animation director for Rick and Morty, Bryan Newton, with us. Hey, Bryan.
I am right in the middle, but not physically.
So we're going to go through every single arc and rank it from our worst, we still like them, but worst to best. And these were a conglomerated rankings we did late last year, I think.
I think it was last May.
You think it was last May?
Yeah, it was this year.
So, and we definitely want some fan feedback. So if you guys have thoughts on this arc, please let us know as we go through them. Now, keep in mind, this ranking does not necessarily reflect the views of individual people here.
No, we took surveys from every single member of the podcast and the editorial team, which is roughly 20-something people.
Yeah, 20, 25 people. We also have a viewer ranking, which we posted somewhere. I don't have it offhand.
So Zach used his powers of math and Excel spreadsheets to create like an average of these rankings.
I'm fantastic at that.
The
That's
Excel
my thing.
fruit.
We could talk about that for the rest of the time, but I think we should get started. And the question we asked today, what are the best arcs in One Piece? But let's start with our lowest, and that's the Buggy Orange Town arc is what ranked the lowest. But is there anyone here who loves this arc and feels that it is misrepresented?
I don't love it, but it's not. I personally don't think it's the worst.
You don't think it should be there? Who does think this should be there?
Well, if only because it's one of the first arcs in the series, it's definitely Oda finding his voice. So as far as what we expect from One Piece, it has not as much as what Arlong did and what even I would say Bharati or Usopp's Village did for the series.
It's less, the themes are less fleshed out, but they're definitely there. You can especially see it with like the owner of the pet food store and Shushu the dog, and that was the man's dream, was to own a pet food store and run it, and they sort of trampled on that, but they you could really see where the sort of the theme of dreams. It started small, even in One Piece, but there wasn't a lot else except for Buggy. Buggy was really great in this arc, but there wasn't much else going on.
I can't remember where I put this in my rankings back when we did, because we did these rankings a while ago, so I don't actually remember a lot of the specific numbers. I think
I can tell you.
I have recently really realized how much I love Shushu the dog. Like I'm definitely a dog person, and just my own family dog passed away a couple months ago, and like looking back at the Shushu stuff, like that really gets me a lot more now. All of a sudden, like I love Shushu. He has a real place in my heart.
Brian.
Yeah, it's funny is that I talked to a lot of people, and I think most of us would say Chopper's backstory is really sad. I've talked to a lot of people saying that Choo Choo really got them initially, and just that was their biggest crying point in the series. I'm like, I get it. It's big.
It's not necessarily. I mean, I do get it. I think when I initially watched, especially this arc, I was not a fan. I thought it dragged. It just felt a little long for what it was. I felt like it could have just been a little shorter and sweeter. But rereading it, I thought it was a lot better. But still, I think on my list, it was dead last for me. So.
This is also an arc that I think notably, I actually do like these episodes or chapters a little bit better in the manga, even though I'm more of an anime guy overall. Because, like, for example, like the scene where Zoro beats what's his name? I can't remember his name now. Kabaji, yeah. The scene where he beats Kabaji, and Kabaji's like, beaten by some lowly thieves, and Zoro has that awesome line like, "We're not thieves, we're pirates." I think that's a great moment, and that, big pop. That's a great moment, and that it is not as powerful in the anime.
I always really like the beginning East Blue arcs because I find that the whole theme of East Blue is defining what a pirate is. With Baratier, it's defining like what a good captain is. With and Kuro, it's like what a pirate is. And with Buggy's whole thing, it's defining what treasure is. Because Buggy's whole thing is that he wants to find Captain John treasure. He finds it in gold and silver. And Nami does the same too. But with Luffy, as he says in that arc, it's about his hat. It's about his dreams. And it makes Nami realize that. And it's our first introduction to the idea of treasure as more than physical things in the series.
And the thing about this arc that it really contributes to the understanding and development of themes that become more apparent and are more developed later on. But it's this is just the beginning for them, so they aren't very deep yet. So it ends up ranking rather low and dead last in our rankings.
We're still gushing a lot for our lowest ranked arc, aren't we?
I think Ed, you ranked it the highest out of the group here, so we got that. Our next arc. Laboon, and I know Alex has a lot of issues with me putting this here even.
Yeah, it's not that I have an issue with you putting it down there. Me and I think Joey and maybe a few other people on the podcast think that this arc is small enough that it should be lumped into the Whiskey Peak arc.
Yeah, I kind of agree.
I disagree.
It's just a hard one to judge against the other ones.
That's all I'll say about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point this was the beginning of the Baroque work stuff, and I think we kind of, at this point, we have a lot of like intertwined little arcs. We got this, then we got Whiskey Peak and Little Garden and Drum Island going into Alabasta. And I think they all have common elements that run through them, common characters that run through them, but I think there was just a separate story here at Twin Capes. And it's not that it was bad, I think it's just when you compare them to all the other ones, there's just so much more going for it.
It sort of lacks resolution. Like the story with Laboon is it's a good story, but it's leaving off. We know that Laboon has this hurt in his past, and Luffy is promised to come back to him, but that's a story that's going to pick up again later. It doesn't resolve completely, so it's a little unsatisfying.
Although it does also have like one of the best gags with all the Crocus stuff.
Oh my God! As you see
if
here,
you do that, you're gonna die. It's like someone's gonna die. Who's gonna die? Me.
In the anime, that is my favorite gag. The zoom in, boom, boom.
The timing of that's brilliant. The timing's absolutely brilliant.
it might be one of my favorite jokes in the anime period. So, again, not to say it's all bad. We're not saying we like One Piece, and the Peace arc is not. We're not counting this on here.
Also, just like if you guys ever have anything in mind or that you want to say, just raise your hand. We'll bring you up here.
We'll bring you up, but you gotta talk in this.
Yeah, talking to the mic.
Gotta talk in the mic. And did you have anything else with Laboon before I spoiled everyone with our number 20, which is the Kuro arc? This one, I feel like we have a little more strong opinions one way or the other, and I think our crew is kind of a little more split on this. Does anyone positive, like, have super positive opinions about Kuro?
The only thing that really like makes me like this arc is that Django's in it. That's really it. And this was the arc that I started that got me into One Piece actually. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't really the arc that got me into One Piece. It was the fact that there's this character using 3 swords, and and that has nothing to do with the arc. So.
This arc almost got me out of One Piece, I feel like. This was like a hurdle for me.
Yeah, okay. It sucks because like whenever I think about like people starting One Piece up, I'm like, man, they got to go through like this arc in order to get to.
Are you guys thinking of the anime or the manga?
Exactly. That's
your first interpretation.
That's what I was about to say.
Yeah,
because going through this in the anime first, how long can you go up an oil slicked hill like that?
Yeah.
How long could that possibly take?
This is where I think your introduction to One Piece is critical because I read all this first. I did not watch it.
The manga's pretty damn good, I think, for this part.
And for me, the manga was this part of the manga was the moment I realized the strength of Oda's storytelling, how he introduces Kuro's like habit of pushing up his glasses, and how Django realized he still had his killer instinct. He doesn't want to cut himself. I'm like, that's a cool character quirk, and you addressed why he had that quirk, which a lot of artists and a lot of people don't do. And the other thing he did was the setup of Captain Morgan in this arc.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, how Django hypnotized him, making him think he was all awesome and great because he thought he captured the Core of 1,000
That was
planets.
probably one of the coolest things in that arc, and I completely forgot about it.
Yeah, not necessary to the story, but just helps flesh out the world a lot more.
If you didn't read the SBS, you wouldn't even know that was the case. It's basically just an Easter egg.
I caught it.
Yeah,
I was reading
yeah,
it, I caught it.
I would never have caught that.
It's really one of the first examples of Oda's long-term planning in stories and things that recur and come back, and characters interact with people you see later on in the future.
Yeah, I actually completely forgot about Django's interaction with Morgan until you mentioned it, which is funny because in Django's cover page story, there's one of the panels is his ship narrowly passing Morgan's little dinghy, and they're both like asleep.
And then Morgan is in. I mean, there's a Kobe Helmeppo one too.
But that follows the Kobe Helmeppo.
No, I know, but it's Morgan slips his way in and out of everything in the East Blue arc. It's kind of cool.
Also, I don't know what everyone's opinion on Kuro is. I think Kuro's cool. Like I think he looks cool, and I think his sword fingers are awesome.
I think that might just be you. No. He's. We decided
he does have poop on his shirt, but that's okay. I'm not judging.
Who doesn't like poop on their shirt?
I
Besides everyone.
He's a craphead. He's a craphead.
No. He's a 401k villain, is what we called him. He's saving for retirement. He's done being a pirate. He's just doing the honest, retired pirate's work of stealing someone's fortune and then killing them. What can you really say? Any other Kuro thoughts? No. Okay.
We don't need any more.
This one, I'm sad it's so low because I love this arc. But this is number 19 is Little Garden. So we'll start with the positive again. Anyone like Little Garden?
Yeah, I love Little Garden. Like I don't know, like it's in our bottom half, and I'm like probably the writers like on our staff.
Yes, Sam and Jill.
Yeah, like this is.
I'm pretty sure I put it pretty low.
Yeah, I think this is the first time that I felt any scope of adventure in One Piece, just because they go to an island and there's dinosaurs and giants, and they're sort of out of their element a little bit. It's a completely uninhabited island. Plus all the fun Baroque Works fights that happen. Really good Zoro gags. The Mr. Prince bit. Like Little Garden is super fun. It's sort of it's sort of ancillary and doesn't really contribute so much to the grand scheme of things, but I think it's a really fun sidebar.
Sam, this was your lowest rated arc.
Yeah,
so I want to hear from
there
you.
are two arcs that I think of as basically as sort of my least favorite. Like I don't dislike any of these arcs. Like I pretty much like just about everything One Piece does, and I'll sort of meet it halfway on anything. There's two arcs I kind of think of as my least favorite, and this is one that I think of as I don't really feel strongly about it in any direction. Like, there's nothing that I especially like about it, nothing that I especially dislike about it. The other one's like a gut reaction dislike, but then there's things I like about it when I think about it. But this one, like, I don't know, I just kind of feel nothing for it. And that's probably because the early Baroque work stuff is probably the stuff I've gone back to the least personally. Like, it's just not something I have any sort of personal, or a lot of personal history with in my just experience of catching up with the series.
In particular, there's one moment that I wanted to talk about with my favorite character, with Zoro, in that he was willing to try and cut off of his own feet to get out of the wax to take down Mr. 3.
That's pretty good.
Like, that's the beginning, and even after Mihawk, there was his willingness to take battle injuries and continue going, just being the super manly guy that he is, and it sort of continues building Zoro's character. It ended up being a small thing in the scheme of things, but I think that's sort of the whole little garden. It's a lot of little character moments.
And not only is it little character moments, but it's really the start of Usopp's takeoff to become eventually God Usopp. With everything with the giants, the start of his real dream. Above being a brave man of the sea, he wants to go to Elbaf and kind of exemplify the way that these giants have taught him to have pride in himself and what he does. And now with Hyrule and everything that's going to be happening in the future, I think Little Garden's going to be extremely important. At least that part of it.
Cool. I think we can
hear that, Sam? Dunk.
It's all a very personal thing. I don't know. For some reason, giants just make me feel nothing in One Piece in general. I don't know why. Except for Oars. I like Oars a lot.
Oars isn't a giant. Oars is
I'm a giant.
A continent polar.
Being a giant, that's a Tuesday.
Oh, for you, it's like, I just wake up. I'm on Little Garden normally. Our next arc, number 18, Amazon Lily. It's Luffy's favorite for sure. So, who loves Amazon Lily? Does anyone love it here?
I don't remember what I ranked it as. Maybe low. I don't know. I love Amazon Lily. The idea of this island of women that it goes on to say that, oh yes, they're all warriors, but they're also still graceful and ladies, and everything is based on like strength rather than beauty. And this is like Oda's greatest showing of different female bodies, and they're considered to be beautiful by everyone around them. I mean, Hancock, yes. Hancock is drawn as a beautiful woman, and she's the strongest of them all. But her sisters aren't conventionally gorgeous, and they're fawned over. And they're two of the strongest people on the island. And I just think that this it's different from everywhere else in this series. We see women all the time in One Piece, but this is a very, very obviously female-oriented island that also is very strength-oriented. And these women are just raiding pirates that the world government kind of just gives into because they need their power, and I love that.
Anyone here really dislike it?
There's certain elements of Amazon Lily that I really do dislike. I found the dick jokes not that great.
Boo.
Yeah. And also the idea of Boa Hancock basically becoming physically ill by falling in love was just sort of cheap to me.
Well, if anything, I was initially turned off by Boa Hancock's character, but I think that's the point when she first appears. Like, she gets everything she wants because she's beautiful. I'm like, oh god, no. And just how she treats these women who often like worship her, I thought was also despicable. Sorry, but
it's depictable.
Yeah. But she warmed up to me as a character as it went forward, and when she snuck Luffy into Impel down in the war stuff, I thought she was great there. But yeah, I think I might need to reread this arc to see if I care for her more as a character, but we'll see.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I agree with I love that she fawns over Luffy, because I do too. But I agree, like the whole like about to pass out thing, that's a little overboard.
It's a soap opera trope.
Yeah. But her backstory is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
She
has a great
slave
backstory.
and going for this whole gimmick, this whole lie to her entire country about her and her sisters being cursed, so that if anyone sees their backs, they'll be turned to stone and killed, is amazing. She has this shame for her past, and Luffy completely ignores it. He doesn't care, and he even punches a celestial dragon. It's just the thought of that whole she meets this person who's done the thing that she's wished someone would do her entire life, ever since she learned to fish her tiger, of releasing her and her sisters. I can understand her worship of him, and in an environment like that, I can understand it leading to the only love that she's ever had. I just really love her backstory.
Well, it's interesting because like Shabadi being right before this, how both this arc and Shabadi really kind of hone in on the implications of slavery in the One Piece universe.
Yeah.
And Fisherman Island goes even further in that.
I think for me, Amazon Lily, when I first watched it, and read it. I really liked it, and I think the reread I kind of soured on it a little because
Yeah, for me, I think I might have ranked this dead last.
I'll double check for you.
Or at least really, really down there, and I think it's as a result of it being in between Shabandi and Impel Down.
Yeah, dead last.
It has nothing to do with the characters really. I didn't like Boa Hancock initially, but she warmed up to me. But I feel like rereading the series, going through like the emotional gravitas that Shabandi has, and then the immense fun of Impelled Down, the arc in between seems sort of like, I don't know, like a distraction almost.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, we have a lot of arcs. 17 is Romance Dawn, which we're gonna throw in the Alvida stuff, the Captain Morgan stuff.
Up until Captain Morgan, right?
After
Captain Morgan.
Yeah,
But this also includes the Shanks flashback.
it's also well, that's the first chapter.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yes, it does.
So it's Shanks, it's Morgan, and it's Alvida.
So it's a hard one to rank, and you can't really. Those are like each one chapter in the manga.
Yeah.
One to,
the
three.
Morgan stuff's actually pretty long in the manga.
No, I think it's only
It's
like
it's
three
like
or
a good
four
5
chapters.
chapters or something.
Okay, we don't have to determine the amount of chapters it is, but is there anyone who really like? I mean, I think we all really like the beginning.
I think I put this one pretty high. I really have a soft spot for this early stuff. I just the image that's popping in my head right now is just the Shanks giving Luffy the hat. Like just the imagery alone that you see in some of these early chapters is important throughout the entire series, especially Shanks giving the hat. And I think Morgan is actually a really interesting character because like right off the bat, like his first line is something like, how does he intro this show? Yeah, like something about being great, and like because he's the highest ranked person on that island, he is the best person on that island, which I think is so core to like One Piece's like philosophy of if you have the power to do what you want, you are in charge of like what morality means basically.
And I think it's actually
it's such a cartoonish way to introduce that theme, but it just bluntness is a thing that One Piece is good at sometimes, I think.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's our first introduction to the actual Marines, right?
More or less, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's really interesting because we see that a lot, and obviously there are good Marines and bad Marines. I mean, Smoker's fantastic, but we do see these Marines that, like Sakazuki, who take their power so much, an absolute power over their subordinates, and Morgan really shows that. He, doesn't he hold someone in front of him to take, or he orders his men to kill themselves because they're scared. I don't know if it was filler only, but Sakazuki does the same thing during the war. It wasn't filler. Okay, well then that happened. So I think it's it's really interesting to see this beginning showing of just how the Marines are kind of being set up to have this problem with their power structures and their authorities.
Ed, you want to say a little bit about Romance Dawn?
Well, I think part of the reason it ends up so low on our list is because of the discrepancy in quality between the anime and the manga. The manga is a really, especially the first chapter, is a really emotional story. But the way the anime starts off with Alvida, wasn't it?
I disagree. I think the anime version's way more interesting. Well, like we open
Word.
Yeah, we open up for one, like if we're looking at just the Alvida stuff, being on like this cruise ship and pirate ship is way more interesting than just some island. And we're sort of jumping into the middle of the story, and then we're sort of getting the explanation for why Luffy can stretch and all that. I think it's a much more interesting way of going about it, and I feel like that's one of the examples of the anime really hitting home, Ryan.
I'll generally agree, just because it has the image of pirates. It's like a ship-to-ship battle.
Yeah,
that's sort of exciting.
I'll agree with that, but I hate Alvida. I hate everything about her. I hate that she got her strength and became beautiful because of it. That bothers me a lot, and it's unfortunately something we see with Oda, which is why I like Amazon and Lily.
Yeah, I agree with that in Amazon Lily. I mean, Marigold is one of my favorites in that arc.
Yeah, after doing the read-through last year,
Hi, Steve.
Hey, hi. Like most podcasts, I just come in late. I couldn't tell you how the Alvida stuff played out in the mangas. Rereading, I was like, Oh yeah, this was on an island, and yeah, it felt really underwhelming. Yeah, the anime kind of made it more grand scale. So, what number are we at for the ranking?
17. Why don't we move on to the next
17.
Out of how many arcs do we have total?
one? 22, I think
22?
we started at. We're going backwards. So
I know, but like
we have
so,
16 left.
Yeah.
So why don't we do number 16, Fishman Island? This is certainly controversial. Let's not talk about it for 5 hours. But Bryan, I definitely want to. I know you're a big supporter of Fishman Island, so I want to hear from you.
I am for various reasons. Despite I definitely agree it's the weakest arc of the New World and one of the weakest arcs of the series. But I do like the homages that Oda puts in to equate to the civil rights movement with Fisher Tiger and Oda Hime mirroring Malcolm X and Dr. Martin Luther King. It's something he'd even have to do, and I wouldn't even expect from any series, let alone a Japanese manga series. But the fact he equates the struggles that we had in this country with the struggles that the fishermen were going through to seek, acceptance in the human world was such a powerful moment. And Fisher Tiger is the best. One of the best characters in the series. So, and despite the arc's weakness, and I do like the final battle stuff, but despite the arc's weaknesses, which are many and very far between, I can go into those too. I think it doesn't deserve as much hate as it gets. But again, it is one of the weaker arcs we got.
And I also like Fisher Tiger's shirt, as you could see. Not here on the podcast version of this, but I am wearing it's not a frog, it's a hippo shirt.
So I think it was kind of a coincidence, but I think us three are probably the most supportive of Fishman Island. I think as we get down the line, we're gonna hear more criticism. But Fishman Island is great. I think it's like I compare it to Skypiea in the sense that it's that kind of a fantasy location. I don't like it as much as Skypiea, as we'll get to eventually. But I think that thematically, I think Fishman Island is one of the most interesting and ambitious stories Oda has ever tried. Like he's telling a story about like actual, historical and political things, and he has opinions. Basically, he has opinions on how, how we should carry, a bad history forward and sharing it with generations to come, and how do we make things better when everyone's sort of blaming each other for everything. I think it's a great location. I think it looks great. Like even if you go back to the anime, like the Fishman Island version of the anime looks so distinct from everything else. Like they really gave it its own feel, and I feel like that's something they actually do a lot in the anime that we don't really get to see until it's like a few years later. And I think this is something that a lot of people aren't going to agree with. I think Hody Jones is a fascinating villain. Like I think the way that they
Okay, all right, pump the brakes here, buddy. So,
like the fact that the fact that he doesn't care about anything, like that was the point of his character is that he barely has a point.
Fascinating.
Yeah, fascinating.
Yeah.
I think that is super interesting.
Very fascinating character.
That's hate.
Is it fascinating or is it just ignorance?
That's why it's fascinating. He's a character.
Well, it's that like these characters who we're sort of set up to fear, or we're set up to believe that they're fighting with some intelligence or for some purpose, and then we find out that it's something so core and so simple that you can't actually like argue against it. You can't bring up a reason for why they shouldn't be hateful to humans or whatever.
So Sam, I think we've clearly gone into two tribes here. We got the anti-Fishman Island people,
and Jill
the
hasn't even started
pro-Fishman.
talking yet.
And Jill hasn't started talking yet. We don't have a ton of time, so I don't want to.
Can I just say, part of the reason this ends up so low is because Vanderdecken is the neckbeard of One Piece. He's fixated on this girl. He wears a fedora. He has no friends, and he's talking about how much he's a loser. He's the most despicable person in the series.
I kind of like Vanderdecken.
Sam, you just see the good in everything.
Also, the mermaids are very attractive.
The reason I don't like Fishman,
Does Vanderdecken have like that Twitter account where it gets to be like around like 1:30 in the morning? He's like, I just don't know what I'm doing with my life, and no one likes the work.
One of those people's running for president.
It's women's bait for some of his friends to be like, tell me I'm good. Tell me I'm really good.
Hi, yeah, I love Fishman Island. Everyone who's ever heard the podcast knows that. I find it. Anytime it comes up, I talk about it. I love Fishman Island. It's a gorgeous setting, as Sam said. It's incredibly fascinating the way that Oda draws these characters because he can just do whatever he wants with the fishmen, fish women, the actual sea monsters, which are phenomenal, and what I find about Fishman Islands, there's so many little things in there that provide the overall feeling of the place. Because you get there and it's gorgeous, and then they immediately get attacked, and they're sent and split up, and they feel this bit of prejudice and racism everywhere. There's little things that Oda brings in, like he even goes into how the people under the sea have children and how they can be a fish person or they can be a merfolk, and different kinds of breeding and species. And he says this is why we don't understand why people above the sea have issues with people who look different. Because he talks about how the children can look completely different from their parents based on some very far off ancestor. And those are little details, don't really come into play, but it explains this overall picture that the fish people are very different in the way they view each other than the way people on the Grand Line or on the Blues do. I find, and like Sam, I find Hody Jones fascinating. He is unlike any other villain that we've had. And you can have your issues with the fight, that's fine, whatever, I don't care. It's not a fighting arc. It's not. They bulldoze over these villains, and that's fine. It's the first arc after the time skip. They're supposed to. They brought in Luffy underwater in a bubble to bring any element of suspense. And the real villain, the real issue, is Noah.
I think we might have read a different story arc.
Well, let me back Joe up at least on this, where Fishman Island had some of the most gorgeous artwork Oda's ever done. And I'm really glad that Zach chose this cover. That is one of my favorite covers. It's gorgeous. There's so much detail.
Oh, no, yeah,
it's so much color.
One thing I can say is that the art is spectacular, especially them taking the deep dive into Fishman Island.
I think he got into scribble vision quite during Punk Hazard, because honestly, I just got the latest volume. What was the latest volume that came out? 79.
Yeah.
I picked that up and opened up, and just it's Oda is, you could tell he's working late nights as opposed to the Fishman Island stuff where I think it's still a little more crisp. Like his style has definitely gotten a lot looser over the years, but I think the artwork is phenomenal. I love browsing through those volumes just to look at some of those page layouts. Brilliant stuff. I think the problem with Fishman Island, it had a lot of hype going in, years of hype.
Yeah, that's
and
a huge
we
problem.
were kind of
I understand that much.
It became a victim of setting up other arcs or other storylines instead of truly being its own storyline.
Yeah. Also, Nosebleed Adventures.
Oh yeah, that's
tough time to be a
Sanji
Sanji fan.
The Sanji stuff is really bad. There are definitely criticisms that I have of the arc. The Sanji stuff is really bad. It's very hard to understand. As beautiful as the location is, it's hard to actually tell where anybody is or what they're doing.
That's my biggest problem.
Yeah, the Sanji stuff is awful, although it does lead into the whole the connection through blood thing, which I love. That scene in the anime is so amazingly done. It's one of my favorites in all time. When Jinbei and
Also, who doesn't love Jinbei?
Okay, Jinbei is
Jinbei's great. Yeah.
Also, I don't know. This is another sort of unpopular one, but I think that the way the fights at the end are structured is super interesting, where they all sort of finish together.
No, I love that.
I'll just say very briefly.
You're just looking at me.
I understand the positive and the negative, Sam. But I think Bryan had said when we originally went through this that I think Oda had a great vision with this and just messed up the execution big time in a lot of ways.
I forget who it was because I actually listened to this episode again. I don't know if it was Joey, but it was I don't get what's underwater, what's above water.
Yeah.
Why do they have inner tubes? What is going on?
It's that. It's
not even that much more clear in the anime.
Or even the bubble gun thing. That's the linchpin.
Oh,
of
the plot
arc.
device?
Yeah. Why
The
didn't
plot-
you set that
the
up in the
plot
beginning?
shooter?
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, so I think we should move on from Fishman Island. We could talk about that for another 6 hours because we did. The Whiskey Peak arc is our number 15.
So is this half of the table we're going to talk about Whiskey Peak now?
No. That's I'm a big fan of the Whiskey Peak arc, but I also kind of understand why it's more in the middle. Do you guys have any strong opinions of this arc?
Well, first of all, if you're a Zoro fan, this is one of his best moments in the entire series.
He's hilarious.
Yeah, that shot with him, with the moon behind him, really great.
I think I ended up ranking this in my top 5 arcs because of that that fight, but also because I like the the beginning of the Baroque work stuff. I think it's super interesting, and I love them as a group of villains. I don't think there's been a better group of villains in One Piece. Honestly, like
The only issue I have with Whiskey Peak is the Zoro and Luffy fight, and while I like the fight, I don't understand why it's happening.
it's a chapter long, whatever.
I know, but that's a big deal because it's in the middle of it, and it implies that Luffy doesn't trust Zoro. And if that's brought up later, and it shows that Luffy learns to trust Zoro, I would be fine with that. But it's just laughed off, and I feel like that's completely like misplaced.
Luffy's straight up threatening to kill Zoro in this fight, and he's actually mad at Zoro for disrespecting these people who he thinks are helping them.
I think that's all I got on Whiskey Peak. It's fun.
I just want to say, even though I think it was kind of clear like early on, but Whiskey Peak is another great example of how Oda doesn't design conventional villains. They're not like they don't look like the organization's 13 members from like Kingdom Hearts or something like that in black trench coats. Like Miss Valentine is
CP9.
Is a catty woman with a giggle who wears a lemon dress and has
and
carries around an umbrella.
the tombstones on the cactus that's badass.
Yeah, that is.
Oh,
Sounds
and
absolutely right.
really good example of villain diversity. The Unluckies. Miss Friday and Mr. 13.
Mr. 13.
The Otter and the Vulture, yeah.
Which one was Mr. 13?
Mr. 13 was the Otter.
The Otter, okay.
Miss Friday has she's the Vulture with the ponytail.
Now this is,
That's
I
how you can
think,
tell that she's a girl.
like Fishman Island, I think our number 14 has a very, split opinion, and that's the Davy Back fights. I know a lot of our reviewers really hate the Davy Back fights for some reason. So is there anyone to represent that side with a negative view of the Davy Back fights?
Also, for those of you who are stragglers, if you have any opinions on any of these arcs, you can raise your hand.
Raise your hand and we'll come up here and you can talk to us.
Yeah.
Explain your reasoning for it. So does anyone have a super positive opinion then about the Davy Back fights?
Tons.
Okay, I'll be back in 10.
We all love it on this panel,
To be honest,
Do we all know Jill? You don't like it? Jill, go for
I
it.
hate the Davy Back fight.
Why?
It's probably because of the anime.
That's a little more fair.
Why? The anime extends it so long and so stupidly. It's just me personally. I can understand why people like it. Me personally, I don't like arcs that are extremely heavy on comedy. It's just not my genre. I mean, I like comedy, but not things that are basically just slapstick. And there are points that are fantastic in Davy Back fight. I love the Afro Luffy thing just because it's so out there that it's really funny. And then when Zoro has to tell Chopper to man up, that's fantastic. And I feel like in perspective, it's really good that Robin is taken away from the crew and has this threat of it because it's right before Water 7.
in the anime.
Okay, well, that's the anime. Okay, well, the threat of having a crew member taken away, I feel is really important right before Water 7.
It's funny that you said I don't really like things focused on comedy. After what we went through previously with Skypiea, which is a long arc, this crazy story and adventure, this was a nice, kick your shoes off, relax,
Yeah.
laugh a little bit.
It's a nice breather.
Yeah, and we don't get as many pirate-esque kind of stories in One Piece anymore. So when Oda would bring it back, be like, hey, remember they're pirates?
So here's some Davy Jones lore.
Yeah, here's Davy Jones lore. They're fighting other pirates, and I love that. And that's something we don't get as much.
And it's short.
Yeah.
It's a volume long, and that's
a volume and a half.
Yeah.
I have to say, though, I really do hate Foxy, but
Love Foxy.
the anime special, when they did Foxy, when they announced it, I was like, oh, really? You're going to give me an anime special and you're going to put Fox in it? I love that special. I think it makes Foxy so much more likable. And I know people don't like it, and that's fine. I
feel like you're
like it.
you're like Mirror World me. I love Foxy. I hate Foxy. Oh, I hate that special, but I love that special.
It's Luffy and Blackbeard.
I think Foxy is a great example of a guy who has a weird personality and a lot of weird hang-ups, but has been able to master his particular devil fruit so well that he's been able to rise to a position in the world that he really should have no right to be at. He's like the ultimate climber.
Also, some just really cool designs. Very, very colorful. I know you don't get that across in the manga, but just looking at that cover image right there, very colorful cast of characters.
Oda was on his game at this point.
I always loved Foxy's Japanese voice actor, who I think is
Bean Shimada.
he was Broly in the DBZ movies. Complete different voice. Oh, and
Well, the groggy.
yeah. Oh, yeah. He's Wapple, and he's the Japanese voice for Krusty the Clown.
Well, also like the
Yeah.
the groggy ring fight with
Oh, yeah.
Zoro and Sanji.
The best,
the
but,
highlight of that whole arc.
Seeing Zoro use a
too.
three sword style move with no swords is pretty sweet.
Yes.
I realize that like most of my affection is generally going to be for like the really big epic arcs, but so that's why sort of the smaller stepping stone arcs are going to be generally lower on my list. But I like Davy Back because even though it is a breather, even though it is more comedy focused, there's still a lot of punch to it. Like the finale where Luffy is beating Foxy and saying, "I'm never gonna lose another crew member" or whatever. Again, that scene with Zoro and Chopper, which is one of the best, coolest scenes in the series.
Agreed, definitely. Steve, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. And yeah, even though the anime kind of threw some filler in there, it kind of made it a little convoluted. I still enjoy it.
Yeah.
But man, when that dub came out for season 4,
Yeah.
if you don't laugh at Foxy in the English version, you have no soul.
So yeah, like I like a good small funny arc if it ends in like a really cool way, which David Back fight absolutely does.
We keep forgetting to mention that Kuzan totally shows
Yeah.
up
Oh, yeah.
at the end of this arc.
And that's one of my favorite episodes in the anime. Go ahead.
But part of the reason I think I may have ended up rating this a little bit lower is that I always put that encounter with Aokiji at the very beginning of Water 7
Yeah,
because,
same here.
because it bookends to the end of Water 7 when he has that discussion
Yeah,
with
same.
Rob. And
That's-
so I never really counted it as part of the Davy Back fight.
But these days, I think when we discuss arcs, it's like, oh, well, when you see the island in view, that's the start
That's
of
the
the
start
arc.
of the arc, yeah. And-
We'll
and
make an exception this time.
I guess
Yeah.
technically this would be the Long Ring Longland arc then.
Yeah.
But I would consider the Kuzan stuff this arc. I think, as we said earlier, there are stories that go from arc, like through arcs. And I would consider this part of the Water 7 NES Lobby saga, but it's a separate story in itself, obviously. Let's move on to the next one. And this is the only picture I could get in color, but the Logtown arc. This, I think, was one higher than it should have been for me. This is like where I really got into One Piece because I like the big, story or overarching story introduction that really comes in Logtown. I love Smoker and Tashigi. And I love that everyone from East Blue comes back. It's like, this was Oda saying, okay, all those characters I'm putting in the series, they're going to come back in some way. It's the first time you really get that in Logtown. What'd I say?
No, that's what I'm saying. Because
Okay.
it's the Logtown, the prologue and the epilogue.
Right.
The beginning and the end. It's
Right.
really important.
It's not Rogue Town?
Yeah, unfortunately, Viz was like, it's probably another case of the L's and R's. And like, no, think about what the characters are saying.
But everyone's saying it's Zoro and not Zolo, so are you sure?
don't,
I'm kidding. Don't start that. Anyone have strong opinions about Logtown, one way or the other?
Like I have this affection for arcs that feel like a pirate arc, and this one does. This feels like this is like your Port Royal, your pirate
I love
town.
the flashbacks to Gold Roger's
Yes.
execution and the parallels that it has with Luffy's. It's like, sorry guys, I died, and he's accepted his death, and
that
he
episode
saved.
And that episode makes Smoker just seem like a super interesting character.
anime filler.
I know it's filler, but I mean, still, that's a good scene, right? Like a kid
Yeah, it doesn't
Smoker,
count.
like watching Gold Roger.
I like it though. To be
That's
honest,
great. That's a great moment.
The Logtown filler is some of the best filler, I think, in general.
Yeah.
I even like the fish one with the... Oh, do we have a question? Yeah, come up here. And we need the microphone,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But yeah, no, I'm actually a fan of the fish episode.
So you like the?
I like some of the fillers. I don't think I like all of them. Like the what's his name? Daddy Masterson.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, I like how they introduced Smoker into Shigi in this arc, and it really set Smoker up to be this kind of recurring, I'm going to get you, this is significant to me, here's like a piece of my backstory, and it's going to connect, and we're going to like keep seeing him like come up. And I thought that was a really good setup that we don't often see given to a Marine.
Two
Yeah.
setups, not just the Marines,
Right.
but Dragon as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
No, thank you for bringing that up too. I don't know if this was mentioned on our episode, but I think this was Jammer that originally said this, that Smoker's introduction is so important because every other Marine, high-ranking Marine that we've been introduced to so far in the story were corrupt. Morgan, Nezumi, yeah. So Smoker would be the first one who's like, no, I'm the good guy. Pirates are evil. We got to take these guys down.
Saying goodbye to Jill, too. Bye, Jill.
Bye, Jill.
Thanks for coming.
We love LA.
With and also the Smoker is the Inspector Zenigata of the One Piece of the One Piece story. So that's always awesome. Any other Logtown opinions?
It's like it's not really near and dear.
Ed has an opinion.
Good thing you're leaving.
One of the greatest anime scenes actually is the very end of Logtown, and when they take the oath on the ship on the barrel, and with the music and some of the better animation really for the first 100 episodes of One Piece. It's one of my favorite scenes.
So let's move on to number 12. Baratier. So Steve.
You didn't even have to guess. It's just like
Steve, it's all you. I'm leaving.
This is the arc that made One Piece number one for me. Because I at the time, I liked One Piece. I wasn't in love with it. And then the Baratier arc started.
Was it Pearl?
It was Pearl. It was Pearl.
Just captured
Totally
your heart.
Pearl. To be honest, though, I really enjoyed Pearl even when I just read the manga.
Oh, here we go.
No, because it goes back to these unconventional villain designs. Pearl looks... He's a fool. He looks like an idiot. That is a stupid design. He's a big, wide guy who wears, like, circles on himself, wears a big ball on his head. Well, I'm explaining it to the people in the audience who probably don't remember. Yeah. He's right there. He's right there. His manga colors are different. God, you guys got me talking about Pearl, and I want to talk about cool things. Pearl's great. This was the introduction to Sanji, who's my favorite character, and I liked him immediately. I feel like it's kind of like some Poochie-esque qualities in the beginning.
Zoro versus Mihawk.
Yeah. And really, my appreciation of Baratier has increased even in the last month because of the recent events in the manga. They've deepened Sanji's character and made his willingness to serve Gin's food in Baratier so much more important just by what's happened most recently.
I can't remember where. This is another one where I can't remember where I put this one. I probably put this one in the middle, but now that I'm thinking about it, I'd probably give it a few notches higher, just because it's packed with a bunch of stuff that I really, really love. Yeah. Like again, the Zoro versus Mihawk episode, obviously like one of the de facto perfect One Piece episodes. I really like. There's two fights that I really like between the Sanji and Gin fight, and then just the Luffy and Krieg fight in general. Like there's a lot that I realized that I go back to in my head with that fight. Like I really like how there's this sense of like chipping away at the armor and like really making you feel the impact of like, okay, we put all our effort into getting this far. All right, let's put a little more effort now.
Like, how about the porcupine cape too? When Krieg's like, you can't punch me because now I'm wearing a cloak covered in spikes.
That's a cool scene.
And
That's
Luffy's
also
like, don't care.
that's a great scene. It's also an example of One Piece having like basically like Zelda style, like just pull weapons out of nowhere. Like a character will have no weapon in one panel, and then the next panel they have it, and there's just no explanation of where they've been hiding it the whole time.
Going back to Zoro and Mihawk, because usually when you think of like characters like I want to be the best, blah blah blah. And then usually think the strongest blah, blah, blah doesn't show up till the final arc. Mihawk shows up very early in the series, and here's how big of an idiot I was when I was first reading the series. I'm like, oh yeah, so I guess Zoro's going to beat him. He's going to be the number one swordsman, right?
Nope.
What a fool.
Yep.
What a fool. And not only does he get beaten, it's so bloody. It's so violent. That's why I kind of like,
Yeah, that's what's so amazing about it. It basically demonstrates how big the world is.
Yeah. And that's like the highlight of the Baratier arc, and the reason why it was kind of lower on my list is because it starts out with such a bang, and then it ends with what I feel like is such a whimper.
Well,
that whimper is me crying.
Oh, okay.
You
should probably close your windows.
Yeah,
Steve.
I agree. Like Sanji's goodbye to Zeph is one of the best scenes in the series. Yeah. Like
And
like I would like Krieg a lot. I don't like his Funimation voice that much, honestly. Like it doesn't.
It's kind of mixed. I actually like his previous dub voice. To be honest,
he's Akainu in the Japanese version.
Yes, yeah. But no, I love how that's one of the moments in One Piece that isn't a flashback that I get teary at is Sanji's goodbye. It's a bunch of men kind of just being like, "Shut up, man! I'm not crying." All right, I'm crying.
How bloody this arc is! Like I'm looking at that cover, and like I have such a vivid memory of like staring at that cover, and like on the original Viz edition before they put the titles on the back, you had that like "I Won't Die," the title on like the volume. It's so cool.
Okay, we're going to move on from Baratier. I know, Steve, you could talk about it a little longer, but we'll do it next time.
Do you have opinions?
What?
It looked like dude had something to say. But.
No, you guys covered.
Dude, did you have something to say?
I sure do.
Okay, let's just move on. Number 11 is Punk Hazard. We're skipping all the way across the series here.
What's funny about this flame cover from here? It looks like Smoker's eating
Himself?
Is on the cover. Yeah,
That's himself.
yeah. You are what you eat, I guess.
So does anyone have a strong opinion about Punk Hazard? Either.
Yeah,
Bryan, talk about it.
I think it's a fun arc. It's Mad Science arc. It's the first adventure arc in the New World. I mean, they get to an island and it's like a samurai's killing us, and it's so cold here. And you get to an island, the first thing you encounter, talking dragon.
Yeah, it's
And
pretty
Talking
sweet.
Head.
Yeah,
I was actually super excited for this arc initially because they within 3 chapters they introduced a dragon and a giant slime, and I was like, and centaurs, and I was like, oh dude, Oda's doing a D&D dungeon crawl arc, and I was it didn't end up being that, but the fact that the elements of D&D were in there, like just monsters, that I thought that was super cool. Like there's a harpy and this weird gas guy, and
a couple of Yeti Cool brothers.
well, the Eddie Cool brothers, aka the worst characters in the
they're the worst
entire series.
They're not the worst.
Second after Absalom, of course. Queen, whatever.
Absalom, Queen, and then
There's all sorts of hairs we
the
can
Yeti
split.
Cool brothers are just like middling. You know, they don't have anything
They're
great.
they're nameless goons that Oda just gave a name to. That's
We're not
But-
talking
but
about
they're-
this whole
but
arc with
they're
the Yeti Cool
huge.
brothers.
Caesar's just like, oh, let's just sick our assassins on them. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, our assassins are like 30 feet tall or whatever.
the best assassins in the world.
Well, I mean, no one said they were good assassins, but
The Punk Hazard arc, I think, is
doesn't mean they're not funny. And everything's cool to them.
I gotta be honest. I should really reread Punk Hazard because I remember loving it. Maybe because we came after Fishman Island.
I
we were
think
really,
that's what it
we were really
was.
burned.
Yeah.
But this one, it had a lot of unraveling. Like first of all, Law came back, and I really was not expecting Law to show up that soon. But I think we have to make peace now. The fact that we're post time skip. Like there's no rules here of how long we have to wait for characters to show up again. But Law came in. There's just more and more mysteries. Like, why is Law here? Who is Caesar working for? Like, what's this whole grand scheme? And unraveled in a pretty interesting way. And yeah, it is kind of like the mad science, weird science arc. Caesar's a very entertaining villain, I gotta say. Yeah, he's
big time. He
He's
still is.
despicable. But when there's the best part is, I think one of my favorite parts with Caesar was when Brownbeard was trying to tell everyone, it's like, no, he has you all fooled. He's just using us. And then Caesar kind of like took the air out of his
Literally,
yeah, he took the air out of him and he couldn't talk anymore. He was mumbling, and like Caesar was just making faces, like it's like, oh, he's just going crazy, and he would turn around to Brownbeard and be like,
There's that, and there's also the scene of Caesar like getting all teary-eyed, telling his version of the history between him and Dr. Vegapunk, which is completely not what happened at all.
the best part is he says like he tells his tragic story, and then it cuts to the actual backstory. He's like, I'm gonna pull the lever. Don't pull the lever. I'm pulling the lever. Boom.
Caesar's one of those villains who's both a really good villain. He's like a real bad guy. Sorry, Sam. I know you want him to join the crew, but he's also. You're wrong. Also,
I'm pretty right. I don't know.
he's also just a great humorous element, and that's in part because of his voice actor
His voice
in the
is so good.
Japanese.
Ryusei Neko,
Yeah.
the voice of Frieza in Dragon Ball Z.
Exactly. And, I can never get sick of Caesar. I don't want him to join the crew, but I want him to be with the crew for the rest
Well,
of the
his
series.
antics are fun.
Got hand raised.
And one thing I wanted to say is that part of the reason this ends up not quite in the top 10 is because it really does drag through the middle a little bit with the body swapping and such.
Yeah, I have a few mixed feelings. Like there are things that I really like. Like I think I love Caesar. I think like Law showing up out of nowhere and suddenly he's a warlord now. I thought that was super cool. I lost my. I think Virgo is a super cool character. Like I just
Virgo's
think
great.
Yeah, like
I
when,
love
when he's
anyone
just
with
like
a burger stuck to their face is great.
and then when he's just like beating everyone up, like just like it's no big deal. I think he's really cool about that. I have two big problems. One, the anime version of this was pretty tiring. And in general, I think that this story is a little too long for what's essentially setting up another like even bigger arc. Like if
That should have been a bad sign to begin with. Now that we think about it,
it's the first part of this Doflamingo saga
So we have another question.
Yeah.
Go for it.
So, like with the body swapping, like at first I thought it was hilarious, especially
about
with
that.
Smoker and Tashigi and Sanji and Nami. But as funny as it was, and as serious as it really can be, how do you guys think Oda deals with like putting in that comedy along with like setting up something really serious at the same time? Like sometimes I think he's really great at it, and then sometimes I think it kind of fails one way or the other. But
Yeah,
like
like an
with
example?
Foxy, like I did not like the Foxy arc because it was actually kind of serious. Like they could have lost Chopper, but it was so comedic,
I
and
see.
it was like it felt like filler.
So
like when I
you're-
was watching it, and I was like, this isn't filler. It shouldn't be filler, but it feels like it because I felt like it just didn't have that right measure of comedy and
Right.
like
You have
the crew.
it's got tonal issues.
Right, it has tonal issues.
I think that
Even Sanji in the blood, like in
yeah.
Oh, that was a
Are
real.
great,
That's a
like
real
it's-
egregious example. Yeah, that's a bad one.
It's supposed to be funny, but it's also really serious. But it just
Yeah.
isn't that funny.
Yeah, I think
because-
though that
Right?
tonal issues in a shonen manga like this are it's kind of a weird thing because when you have like a manga like One Piece, you compare it to something like Dragon Ball where there's dick and fart jokes, and the next in the middle of like the Piccolo Daimao arc where somebody dies for the first time, and I think that's just part of the genre, honestly.
I'm trying to think of an American animated example where there is a serious kind of drama action show with comedy. I'm thinking of The Tick, but that's not.
I mean, I don't have examples in American animation, but I think this is one case in which I think Oda has a ton in common with like Quentin Tarantino, where it's like mixing that the comedy and like the sort of the almost goofiness of the way he mixes references and stuff like that, but also tries to like sell sincere drama.
And there's one example that comes to my head, and since Bryan's here, it's Rick and Morty. I think has a lot of that combo. I think the season finale in particular.
I think
Although I think for me it feels like Rick and Morty the ultimate goal is comedy and laughter, and in One Piece the ultimate goal is to like make your heart soar.
Yeah.
Making you laugh along the way.
Is that a genre? Let's move on to the next one.
I just thought like that. I think by default you got to look at One Piece as very kind of kooky. Like I don't know. I think people used to label it as like a comedy when it's not. But like it's such a zany world that I think the more dire situations and the more serious situations, that like those are when like it's things. This is a little break from the norm. It's hard to explain. And now that I'm thinking about it, though, I think I might rank Punk Hazard lower because like the body swapping thing, nothing was really
gets old
done
after
with
a
it.
while.
It was just
fun for a
It
little
was
while.
just to stretch out the middle, and
Frankie is Chopper. It's worth it.
yeah. But I got
Robin's reaction to that?
I just got really disappointed because I really thought that they.
Oh, that was.
Right.
With
Right.
Smoker and Tashigi, it definitely made less sense, and it
Yeah,
really just to
well, for
open
the
up
list-
her
for the listeners,
jacket.
for the listeners, because she wasn't mic'd up.
Right.
It made sense for Smoker and Tashigi to switch because Smoker couldn't use his powers to the best of his ability.
Yeah, but
That's true,
Law
too,
did
yeah.
it so the Straw Hats couldn't leave. Essentially.
we should move on because we have a.
We're in
1
our
hour
top
left.
10. Yeah, we only have an hour to get through our top 10. How are we ever going to do it? It's never going to happen. We're going to start with Impel Down. That's our number 10 arc.
And a lot of people in our I think a lot of people we know put it as their number 1, right?
No.
I know Roger.
Roger's the only one. Manovsky, who's
Minovsky likes it.
who's this
Casey,
fan, who's been going through the entire series, is like, Impel Down better be number 1 for some of you guys.
Wow.
There was only one of us. But yeah, Alex, do you want to, since you got the mic?
Yeah, sure. Impel Down I thought was amazing. Super fun. My favorite part about it is the fact that Luffy found a whole other fun crew to pal around with in this story arc. And the best thing about the story arc by far is its pacing. It moves
Only
so
in the manga.
quick. Only the manga. Well, I only refer to the manga because I'm a purist. and it's so quick and so fast paced, and it's packed full of action. Each chapter, it's like boom, level 1, boom, level 2, boom, level 3, and you keep going down. It has the introduction of Jinbei, the introduction of Ivankov, the return of Bon Clay, the return of Buggy, the return of Crocodile, the return of Blackbeard and his crew, the introduction of Magellan, all these great characters. There's so many character introductions in this arc that are so like well done.
And in particular, Magellan and Hannibal are kind of lost in the shuffle when they're really two of the best antagonists, because I don't know if you could hardly call them villains, because they so strongly believe in their own justice, and they seem to be good people. In particular, Hannibal was talking about like the despair that pirates make the people of the world feel, and how he's going to protect them by keeping these pirates, in prison this way, even if he's brutal. That he really believes that, and he's doing the good for the best, for the world. And I really admire that, in particular about Magellan and Hannibal. And there's also the aspect of introducing the Newcomer land, the sort of radical acceptance of all sort of bodies and types of genders and stuff.
Any other Impel Down thoughts, Sam?
Yeah. So when I said that there were two arcs that I considered to be kind of like my least favorite, like Little Garden was the one that I kind of feel nothing towards either way. Impelled Down is the one that like I have. That's my like
Alex,
gut
stop throwing
reaction
stuff at Sam.
least favorite. Though logically, when I think about it, there's a lot that I love. And I will cop to the fact that a lot of it is probably due to the anime, like because I was watching it I watched it in the anime, and
It's slow.
yeah,
It's
the Impel
really
Down,
not good in the anime.
Impel Down really got it bad in the anime. Like
It really did.
It was very slow, and
Just like
it did not
Usher.
help at all.
I think of all arcs, Impel Down had the most disparity between how good the manga was to how poor the anime is.
Well, I mean, sort of where it goes to my next point then is that, like I was saying, like I like the really big arcs that have like big, sort of like really satisfying finales, and Impel Down is in the middle. Like it's not the beginning of a story, it's not the finale of a story, which are the parts I generally like the most. It's just sort of there, and like I don't connect with the location that much. Like it's not something that appeals to me personally a whole lot.
It's almost like the Straw Hats Get Split Up saga. Amazon Lily is Act 1.
Well,
Impel
I
Down
start
is the
that
juicy
like
middle,
I call
and
like
then Marineford's the final act.
to me it's like Sabadi, Amazon Lily, Impel Down, Marineford. Like that's the saga right there.
Wait, so you don't connect with the location? You weren't born in a prison?
Like I mean, it's like just like on a gut level. Like I
born. You think you were born?
I don't need to see the characters running around that location that much. It's not that's not a fun adventure for me. I love Crocodile showing up. That's my favorite part of that arc. Is that Crocodile is now like sort of teaming up with them and all that.
Any other final thoughts on Impel Down?
It's totally this is an Oda prison. Here's the floor where a giant T-Rex runs around and attacks the prisoners.
we were talking earlier about how
Ramen,
Punk Hazard's like the D&D fantasy. If anything, Impel Down kind of represents that more than anything. Like it's literally a dungeon.
Let's move on to number 9. And that is Thriller Bark, and I think we've moved a lot. Alex, you've moved
Alex
the
collapsed.
most.
2 years ago, I would not have seen that.
Yeah, Alex, can you talk about your evolution on your opinions of Thriller Bark a little bit?
Yeah, a lot of the read through was especially helpful for me in compiling my list of arcs, because I hadn't done a read through since I've been reading it weekly, and I have been reading One Piece weekly since Skypiea. That's a huge reason. And Thriller Bark, whenever I would talk about it, I'm like, oh, it's so slow, so boring. God, they spend a gajillion years fighting oars. It's terrible. Like, nope, there's nothing redeeming about it except for the end. And Thriller Bark is by miles the funniest One Piece arc. It has the most jokes per capita. It's and the best joke, which I think is the
zombie putting the zombie back in the
pushing
ground.
the zombie back into the ground. I love that. The introduction of one of my favorite characters, Brook, his backstory, which is my personal favorite backstory, and it's got a couple things that I don't necessarily enjoy. Like I don't really like the fight with oars. I
I think, you know what? Even I have to agree with everyone else. I think Ors was something, when I was reading it weekly, that I hated.
Yeah. I mean, like
watching it weekly.
Well, I think the thing that really sours me with all the fights is the fact that like Robin and Chopper had a really sweet team up going, and then Ors came in and finished the fight for them.
Yeah, that's true. Good point.
Absalom is the worst character
But
in the entire series.
that's Hogback's fault. That's not Orig's fault.
Yeah.
But, anyone want to do some Thriller Bark laughs?
Foos.
There we go.
There we go. That's the one.
That might be where some of the divisiveness is.
Haha, I'm Absalom. Stole.
The laughs may have more of a divisive opinion here.
I'm Absalom.
I'm Absalom.
And
Also,
the introduction of Brooke in this arc is so sad and also hopeful with the way he finds hope in his new crew and joining in and finding out about Laboon and all that stuff that sort of gives him new life even though he's already dead.
and it's such an extreme.
You really enjoyed yourself there.
I feel like I can't rank arcs like this, but I realize it now. I think Oda, just every arc that follows one is just almost like a complete opposite of the other. Like we had, because Alabasta was a war in a desert country, and then we go, well, now we're gonna be up in the sky, just venturing around, and then we went from Enia's Lobby, which the Water 7 stuff, and it was so dramatic, and getting Robin and Usopp back, and then Skeleton with an afro, and I'm like, oh, Oda, you know how to keep me coming back.
That's actually a really fundamental sort of aspect of like pacing in stories. Like you have to have a high, and then you have to have a low, and then each high is getting like progressively bigger than the last high, but you need those lows in order for the highs to matter.
Also, I just want to mention, like, it's Oda's like Nightmare Before Christmas arc, and also probably one of my favorite endings to any arc ever.
Oh yeah, actually, Ed, if you wanted to talk about Zoro's poignancy in this arc, because I know, like, as much as a Zoro fan I am, you're an even bigger one.
Zoro's role in the crew is the first mate. He's the guy who reminds Luffy of his duty. He keeps Luffy on his toes. He makes sure that Luffy is living up to his expectation to be the Pirate King, because if Zoro's going to be the greatest swordsman in the world, then Luffy has to be the Pirate King, and he needs to stay focused on that. And he was willing to give up almost his whole life to see Luffy become the Pirate King. It's more important for Luffy to achieve his dream than for Zoro necessarily to be alive there to see it. He's the man sort of behind the man, and doesn't necessarily want to be the Pirate King himself. He's not a leader. He's the guy who supports the guy. I love that.
I don't think we're going to beat that.
I haven't said anything on Thriller Bark yet.
No, Sam, you don't get. No, go ahead. Go ahead, Sam.
I love Brooke.
But you're not going to beat Ed.
He's my favorite Straw Hat. That flashback is easily one of my favorites in the series. The Ors fight is my favorite fight in the series. I think it's I think it's really cool to see the Straw Hats team up. But I also love another one of my favorite aspects of One Piece is when we're getting into sort of those holes of delay of gratification, and like we seeing these characters like team up to like execute this plan, and then it fails, and then they got to start from scratch and improvise a new one. And like it's just amazing to see them like put all this energy basically just to trip Ors, and then Ors just gets back up. And it's like, well, now what do we do? And then it just keeps building and building in new and interesting ways each round.
A-hole and just does that.
Oh, I just remembered why I didn't like the Ors fight. Nightmare Luffy. I don't like Nightmare Luffy.
Oh, I like Nightmare Luffy.
I have no opinion about Nightmare Luffy.
Here's the thing. I'd be with you if Nightmare Luffy saved the day, but he didn't.
Yeah.
He failed. Yeah. But then the whole crew had to work together, and that was the final blow.
I mean, like I think the thing that it's just at that point the arc seemed really long to me. I'm still having like Vietnam flashbacks.
Because I remember reading that week to week, and that was a big like, oh, he's just gonna come and beat the thing down. I was like, no, that wasn't the final resolution. Yeah. So I was.
Let's move on to number.
And then obviously,
let's move on to number 8. I have a feeling this would be.
I have so many opinions.
Okay, with number 8, I feel like this one may change. We ranked this at number 8 like soon after the arc ended. So I'm going to ask everyone first: would you rank this higher or lower than the ones you've seen thus far, if you can, Ed?
It's sort of just far back enough in my memory at this point that I think I might rank it a little bit lower than I did initially, just because of I've been reminded in the most recent chapters of how great Oda's storytelling can be, and how much of the middle of Dressrosa really felt like a slog, and the fights with just in the crew separating wasn't necessarily my favorite thing either. But there are aspects of it that I really did love. I really enjoyed the Kyros story, Kyros' personal journey. But yeah, I don't think it would necessarily be as highly rated for me right now because of how good the stuff in the current manga is compared to it.
Yeah, that's a really good point to make. Actually, even when I finished it, actually, I ranked it really low when we finished it.
I'll check for you. Yeah.
Simply because whenever I read things weekly and it's a really long arc and there's a lot going on, I suffer from arc fatigue like nobody's business.
You ranked. I don't think you ranked it that bad. Where is it? Keep going. Oh yeah, you ranked it sixth to last.
Yeah. The thing about Dressrosa is this: there's so much in it that I think that Oda got too ambitious with, the reintroduction of Sabo. Doflamingo was a long time coming, so there's a lot of hype to live up to with this villain, and I think that Doflamingo is actually a very good villain. But the problem with Dressrosa for me lies within some of the more ancillary characters like Riku and Rebecca, who I thought were written terribly. Yeah. And it sucks, too, because I really wanted to like Rebecca. I really, really did. We could probably get into that a little bit more, but honestly, there's so much.
That's a whole other discussion.
The problem with the Dressrosa arc is there's too much in it. It's the longest One Piece arc.
Yeah.
And I feel like...
At least in an individual setting, like in one island. Yeah.
Yeah, but even with Water 7 and its lobby, I feel like much more happened.
Yes.
Like I don't think a whole lot happened in Dressrosa, even though there were elements of things happening, if that makes any sense.
100%. Steve, what do you think? How is it?
I was going to say, would I rank this higher or lower? Because this is through the science of math of
right. That's
all
true.
It's combined.
Well, should I say has it aged better or worse?
Because I think Dressrosa. I still barely just ended. Yeah. Well, I forget if it was
last year. It's been a year.
I forget if Dressrosa is even in my top 10. So naturally for me to say, would I rank it higher or lower than number 8? I would definitely rank
Steve,
it. Steve,
for you, it was not in your top 10. It was number 11. So there you go.
Yeah, I think I'm still kind of burned from Dressrosa, arc fatigue. Was really hoping for some characters like Rebecca and Riku and Viola. Viola was so close to having this turnaround, and it just
Sanji's first kiss. That's
really
nice.
Soured me. It started with a kiss.
Yeah,
I was actually going to say that the thing that sucks about it, and I mean that sucks for a lot of people who are Law fans, but I feel like the focus was taken away from some of the characters that should have gotten the spotlight put on them, and more towards Law and his vendetta.
Yeah.
Because I really wanted to see some nice resolution with some of the other characters. Law's flashback made me like the character a whole lot more, and Corazon is one of the most beloved One Piece characters, I think.
It's a long arc, but technically it's solid. There's hardly anything in it which you can point to and say that was a problem.
Birdcage.
No, not even.
It went off the rails once.
The birdcage.
Once the toys were restored back to the people.
No, I
and
thought that
animals
part
were.
I thought that part was fantastic.
No, it was great. No, but afterwards, because then that's the.
Here's agree
another
with
thing.
Steve. Yeah.
If we have another damn arc where it's a ton of people running away from something or running towards something, I'm gonna lose my freaking.
Well,
mind.
we had that.
That's because that's what Fishman Island was.
And
that's
Punk
what
Hazard.
Punk Hazard was, and that's what
Dressrosa
was.
Not Fishman Island.
Well, Fishman Island, they were running away because Noah was falling down.
But they couldn't escape anywhere.
No, that was longer than you think.
They literally were
But
just
people
waiting.
were running, Brian.
Fuck off. So, hold on.
Bryan, what do you think of Dressrosa?
Yeah.
I mean, has it aged well for you? I guess is the question I'm asking.
I would say I don't know what I put it on my list, but
I'll let you know.
I could drop it a point, but the thing is, I think we're all in line that Rebecca was a disappointment, but that we're also looking at that from our.
It was in your top 10. It was number 8.
Okay, I could put it at 9, no problem. Rebecca was a disappointment based on the setup that we were all expecting Oda to go through. I mean, we only had a chapter or two of Rebecca portraying herself as this badass gladiator, but that apparently wasn't his intention
Not even
at all.
a badass gladiator, just a capable fighter.
Can I finish what I want to say?
Cannot finish.
So, we also have to understand that, like, culturally, Japan's not as great as far as like presenting female characters. And Oda, even though, and sometimes he is the exception, he fails. He fails to our expectations because he didn't come up, the women's suffrage movement probably didn't happen in Japan the same way it happened here. So I get it. Other than that, I think Dressrosa, despite its length, despite a lot of like arcs and characters and, heavily focused on law, which is the point, it's still technically a very solid arc, which I have almost no objections to outside the length, and which I can get over once the series is done.
Sam?
I think Dressrosa is easily the most like flawed arc in the series. I still like it in a lot of ways, but there are still ways in which it just it fails at so many things that One Piece is normally so good at. I could have totally rolled with it being so long and having just a million different sort of sections of the arc, like it being 100 episodes long, it having all these fights, and then we have to build to Luffy's fight, and then we have to go through the
10 minutes. The 10 minutes.
Then we have to go through the 10 minutes, and then like all that stuff. I'm fine with. Like, actually, I think stuff like I think really overindulgent storytelling is really interesting, and I feel like that's what like art should be a lot of the time. But the problem with Dressrosa is that the payoff just is not that strong ultimately. I was not like there's so many things that where it felt like it was going in one direction at the beginning, and then it felt like Oda changed his mind, or he forgot where he was going, or like either it has something to do with editors, or that was also the era where he was going through a lot of illness and exhaustion and whatnot. So I think that's probably a fact. Yeah, and he switched editors.
Yeah, that's I'll agree with you there. One thing that you mentioned, the payoff. This arc, I would have a whole lot of problems with if it weren't for the fact that by the end of it, Luffy gets an exponentially larger crew, vis-a-vis the Colosseum gladiators.
I guess my problem with that is that feels like that's still just the beginning of something else that's bigger, which is what we're still just a constant loop that we're in.
Sure,
and
but what I'm saying is if that didn't happen,
right,
that arc would have no payoff for me.
Yeah,
like completely. Like even like the Doflamingo's a great villain, but as far as like a family or a group of villains go, like his team was very forgettable.
Well, and that was kind of the next thing I was going to bring up is that they really began setting up Doflamingo like as an emotionally interesting character, and like his relationship with his family is interesting. And then you get through it, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Like his relationship with his crew just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, like they basically found him and was like, okay, well, we're gonna make you the next,
And it just screams of like we started going this direction, and then oh crap, now we want to simplify it, so we got to do this. Then
starting a new podcast with you and Dude just arguing about.
Well, no,
I think we're in agreement here.
This is actually something we're agreeing on, which is out of the ordinary.
Like I remember one of my favorite editorials to write on the site was one where I basically just wrote like it was like before the Luffy versus Doflamingo fight had really started, and it was basically just like fan fiction of where I thought the rest of the arc could go, and I actually liked my version better than Oda's, which is almost never the case.
All right, enough.
I almost always like Oda's ideas more than mine, and I felt so underwhelmed by just the emotional payoff of Doflamingo as a character, because I really think that they intended to go somewhere a lot more interesting than they ended up going.
Like on that topic, that's kind of why I don't get too into theories or other stuff like that. Maybe because I'm not as creative, but I don't want to be married to my idea and then be disappointed. I think this has been a little too negative. I just want to bring up some of my favorite parts of Dressrosa. It was the return of Sabo, which was huge. That was a huge reaction across the One Piece fan community, and everyone thought that he was dead. Come on. Zoro versus Pika made me feel like I was 13 again watching the anime.
The manga too.
Oh yeah,
that was some
that
of the
manga
best
chapter.
Manga. We were freaking out when that came out.
The anime, but the manga chapter that was so much fun. Like there are salvageable things from God Usopp. Oh, great arc for
Ptolemy.
And despite some controversy, Frankie and Senor Pink pretty much having a strong style New Japan wrestling match. It was really cool. Come on, like they're like hundreds of feet in the air, and he's gonna German suplex him into the ground. Like, how can I not love that?
I really like almost all of those individual fights, honestly. Except for if there's a few standouts that I don't like the Diamante one's not that great. Treble.
Diamante, I just wanted him to leave.
Gladius.
I just wanted him to leave.
No one cared about that.
Gladius was fine. It was just Diamante just had
Tom,
he had go away heat.
let's move on to number 7.
I have one more thing I want to say.
We talked about Dressrosa for 3 years.
I have one more thing I want to say.
Yes.
Say it in 3 words.
I think of like arcs like Arlong, Alabasta, Ennis Lobby, Marineford. I think of those as the checkpoint arcs. Like those are the arcs that the breather arcs build to, right? And then
Right.
each one's like sort of bigger and more interesting than the last. And I feel like Dressrosa should have been the next one, but it doesn't really feel like it is.
Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing, and I think it's just part of the new world thing, is that Dressrosa is both a checkpoint and also a stop, along a much bigger arc as we get to the Emperors. So it's not. So Oda can't give you all of that. Like, we get the relief. It's all done. I mean, we kind of do have that, but there's still a lot more to come. I mean, that might be part of the reason why we're kind of like, eh. Anyway, number 7, Sabao the Archipelago. Shabandi. I'm pronouncing the Funimation way. Here's our favorite part of that. So.
That is one of my favorite episode titles.
J. Peterman's
Slave Catalog.
So yeah, I
Why
love.
do you still have that up on the screen? Like you're not going to show the volume 51 cover. It's like, no, let's start with the Peterman.
No, we start with J. Peterman's Slave Catalog. But Shabandi has some of just my favorite stuff in the series, and it's just so much fun, and it ends in such an unpredictable way. We started the podcast at the very end of this in the anime, when the simulcast started in 2009, and it was just so unbelievable. Like, we just rescued Robin for like 2 years, and now they're all gone, and what happened to them? And we had no idea what happened to them.
And that's really still probably the best episode of the anime since we've started the podcast. It might have been that, and just the capturing and the dealing with slavery in particular really leads into Fishman Island later on in the story, as well as leading into the part that it intersects with on Amazon Lily. And just leading up to the punch of the celestial dragon was one of my favorite moments in the manga. Actually, it's even better than it is in the anime. I think it's great in the anime as well, but it's just a lot of fun.
Shabandi's great across the board. It's a great length. It is extremely poignant, and it's Shabandi. I think is actually a really great like checkpoint along the adventure, just because we return to Shabandi later on, and it's such a great moment. But this is also a great arc because it introduces the supernovas, and they're all fan favorites. They're all great.
I really love the supernovas. They're all very creative in their designs. Also, this setup, this was our introduction to the celestial dragons and the prejudice, and it's just like how abusive the world government was. Because Shabandi is like, oh, it's like this, it's a lawless land, but also like, oh, hey, here's this theme park. By the way, we don't serve your kind here. And it's like, oh, damn. It's like,
You're right. We'll have to wait out.
it's just, it was kind of like, it's almost kind of like One Piece itself. Like, it has this very warm and, loving exterior. And then it's like, oh, man, this could get deep. That's kind of what like Shabandi is.
Yeah, and the 11 supernovas we finally get into. I mean, this is the first time the actual implications of the survival game tournament that the Grand Line comes into full play when it's like, hey, other people have been doing these islands too and making a name for themselves. Here are your rivals.
They've been going different routes, which is super interesting.
True.
You have a Rouge who comes from the sky.
Yeah, I mean, we're just theoreting. It's theoretical that they followed on the Grand Line path. Maybe just dropped down right on Shabadi.
Yeah, maybe they found an eternal pose and they just went straight there. What? Oh, this? I don't have to do
But they
all
all
the
have
other
bounties,
stuff.
though, so it's not like, hey, that guy left Sky Island too fast. 200 berry bounties.
Sam.
I think Sabri is really great. I mean, obviously, I don't think we mentioned Kizaru or Rayleigh yet.
Oh, yeah.
They're
Oh,
both great characters. I love the supernovas as much as everyone. I love the location. It's aside from the slavery bit, the location is
It's a nice place. To take
it's right
the
up there
family.
with like
Yeah.
Water 7 as a place you'd actually want to hang out. And I do think that the ending is fascinating. Like it's just like.
And now it's over.
Yeah,
That's the series.
You would have no reason to believe that anything like that was possible in One
No.
Piece at the time.
And even though we saw Akuma and we knew
Yeah.
it was possible.
That's the thing. Like we thought, like, what are we gonna do now when Kuma showed up at the trailer park? Like, how are they gonna get out of this? And when they got out of this, like, oh, okay, all right, we'll be fine as long as Kuma doesn't
And
show
then
up
they
again.
pulled the
Oh
trigger.
God, there's Kuma again, and except there's more of them. So then it was like, how are they gonna get out of this? There's no way.
All right, so I think we can move on to the next one. Number 6 is Drum Island. I love Drum Island so much. I love this arc. It is one that will make me weep every time.
Not Sam.
I love Drum Island. I mean,
You just
obviously,
listen to that.
obviously, I've
not
never.
Sam. He hates this. I'm saying like, no, not Sam. He doesn't. So
Sam
there's this
doesn't
saga of you over this weekend where we found out you don't cry at anything. So.
I want to cry. Like I would love if any work of art or piece of entertainment made me cry, I would wear it on my sleeve. But it just hasn't happened.
Okay. Do you have opinions on the Drum Island arc, Ed?
Just that final speech that Hirlook gives to Chopper. It's one of the most heart-wrenching things in One Piece, and it really sort of solidifies the major themes of One Piece of getting out in the world and finding your crew and going on an adventure. I love it. What does it mean? And also, what does it mean to die? Is that as long as the will is inherited, you don't never die.
Drum is one of my favorites. I think it's in my top 5. Chopper's backstory is insanely sad, and it really has a great payoff at the end. I actually like that scene in the anime the best over the manga, where you see the drum rockies all lit up, like the big pink snowfall. That makes me cry. But aside, like Wapol is one of my favorite villains because he is so despicable.
Yeah, but he's really wacky and comical.
Yeah, it's the perfect blend, I think.
Yeah, that's One Piece. That's One Piece. It can be something very cartoony, but it could still feel very real.
Yeah, he's actually really good at bridging that gap between serious and wacky because of like the stuff that just he does. Yeah, like it's crazy.
Yeah, I think Drums is also our first example of a sidetrack. Because they were supposed to be heading like directly towards Baroque work in Alabasta, and all of a sudden Nami gets sick, and so they had to like detour. And apparently, none of the other crew has ever been sick before, which is hilarious.
I guess
Good gag, yeah.
I guess Thriller Bark is like that too.
Yeah, Thriller Bark's a bit of a sidetrack.
That one was less of a voluntary sidetrack.
Right.
If you want to track all the sidetracks between the Ennis Lobby and Fisherman Island, it's just all detours, basically.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, I mean, I love Chopper's backstory as much as everyone else. I think my favorite scene is when Luffy's like holding up the flag and like Wapple's trying to shoot him down.
Yeah.
I think the really tender and emotional parts of that arc are legitimately as great as everyone says. I don't think I like Wapple as much as you guys. I definitely don't like his cronies at all.
No, they're pretty bland and forgettable. They're not the best part of it.
I love Kureha. I think she's growing on me more and more over time.
With Goku's voice.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Kureha is one of my favorite female characters in the series.
Yeah, she's great.
Awesome, badass.
Dalton's great as well.
Dalton's great.
The hiking bears, the Lapons, the animals on Drum Island are fantastic.
And then the lady that looks like a hiking bear. There's so many good bits.
Wait, Ed, what's her name?
Negi Kuma Maria?
Okay, you have too much free time.
The best is because Zoro is usually, these days we're so used to Zoro being the guy that always gets a fight in an arc no matter what. I wouldn't be surprised if he just shows up in this new arc. It's like, Zoro, you're not part of this team. Yeah, but I want to fight.
He got lost going somewhere else.
He takes a break in this arc to, I'll do some cold weather training, and he gets lost in the snow.
The one fight he has just to get a jacket.
Oh, yeah. Forgot about that. He's like, I love this jacket. These are the bad guys, right?
His fight was with hypothermia. Any other thoughts? Yeah. Steve.
Anime version is superb, and
Yeah. This
remember
is
when,
probably one of the
remember when
best anime
Toei did a abridged Alabasta arc movie, and they messed up pretty bad, and then they did one for Drum Arc, and it's like, oh yeah, because Drum makes a better movie because it's shorter, it's a better standalone story.
And Ave Maria.
The anime version, this is so good. If you haven't seen this in the anime yet, watch it.
Sub, dub, it's all great. It's really worth it.
Either way.
Let's move on to number 5. And that's Jaya and Skypiea. I know, Sam, this is your number 1, so why don't we start from the back and go to the front here? So, go ahead.
All right, yeah, Skypiea is far and above my favorite One Piece arc. It's the one that I had the strongest personal attachment to because that's the first time that I actually watched One Piece seriously rather than just just getting a vague idea of what's going on through osmosis. This is like the first arc that I marathon, so I have a lot of personal attachment to it. But I also think it's my favorite arc because it is 100% just a pure fantasy adventure. It's one of the most piratey arcs because it's about a treasure hunt. It's all about trying to get treasure. And as I've been sort of saying, just this whole panel is I love a good epic story. I love something with twists and turns and detours and delays of gratification. And Skypiea has basically my ideal version of that. Like this is my ideal fantasy adventure with the perfect beginning, middle, and end. The Jaya stuff gets me, chokes me up. The obviously the Nolan flashback. That's one of my favorites. That's up there with Robin and Brooks as my favorite flashbacks in the entire series. And just the moment when Luffy lands that final blow, where it's everything's been so complicated, nothing's been going smoothly for anyone. But then you get to that moment where he lands that final blow, and all the subplots come together all at once, and they all get solved by that one moment where the bell rings.
And I just
All
want to
get
say
solved with punching.
But I want to say one thing. One of my favorite parts about Eneru, the villain in the arc, is that he's defeated, but he could have continued that fight, honestly, but he chooses to just leave.
Yeah.
Leave and go to space.
Yeah, another.
Why not?
Yeah, another.
Eneru took his ball and went home.
He's a dick that way. Yeah, the arc is fantastic, and I also want to point out another example when Oda brings out American cultural parallels with the Native American and the European quote unquote conquest of this planet of this.
It's not something you see in anime usually.
I know. That's why I'm it's just like what I said with Fishman Island with Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. I'm he didn't need to do that, but it just, especially I guess for our culture, it resonates more.
Definitely.
For the story and the fact that religion plays a huge part in that, and faith in a way where NL sets himself as a god, and I'm that guy's a jerk. You shouldn't worship him. You shouldn't listen to him. And unfortunately, the people of Sky Island were basically put in fear and had all these weird rules because of religious indoctrination. You can't say no to God. And Luffy and the crew are just yeah, we don't believe in that. We're just gonna come through, do what we want, and protect our friends.
Zoro is amazing with it.
Yeah, I love Zoro.
Zoro's great in this arc.
Just I don't pray to God. Chopper's so cool.
For me, Jaya and Skypiea, when I originally watched it, to be fair, I was not a huge fan of it. I thought it was a departure, it was a sidetrack, the whole thing. And I think everything we know today and just how you realize, no, this is actually the main story. This is the main story in a way that, we don't see in really any other arc, except Zou, I think, recently might be one of the few exceptions. This is the big, overarching, background, super historical story, and it's amazing for that reason. Plus, it's a fun, cool arc with a good villain. That's
something I wanted to say earlier. Is I think one of the biggest criticisms over the years is it doesn't really tie into the other arcs. Nothing of consequence happened. Nothing of consequence happens
it's an arc of
yet. No, it's bound to happen because now. I don't know how to exactly describe it. I don't know if other arcs are now taking from Skypiea or if the Skypiea arc is truly
I think
affected by events that have happened on the sea.
I think this was always Oda's plan. He always had a bigger picture, even if you couldn't see it when you're looking at the pieces. He's always I want to introduce these elements. I'm just doing it now.
I also want to talk about Jaya a little bit because that was such a great little appetizer for the later on of the Earthbound sort of story as opposed to the story up in the sky with the introduction of Blackbeard and he's Blackbeard's sort of like the Dark Universe version of Luffy. He believes in the power of dreams, but he is the bad guy. man's dreams will never end. And also the one punch of Bellamy is such a great moment in both manga and anime that it's really hard to beat.
And I love all the conversations of romance in the literal sense. Like we are doing this because it makes us feel good, because this is like
And also, I think the fact that Jai is included in all this makes the arc even better. Because I think Bellamy, I like that character so much because he was a relatable villain. Not that we saw ourselves in Bellamy, but like, who hasn't dealt with that kind of, someone just antagonizing you, being who you are, having your dreams. I felt that was really relatable, and it was really awesome seeing beat with one punch.
Okay, I think we should move. Alex, you have?
Yeah. Like I said earlier, this is an arc that I read weekly. So rereading.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So rereading it was kind of a slog, but I've come to really appreciate and love it because it's very good standalone. Something we didn't talk about is that this is the first major flashback that didn't involve any character joining the crew.
Mm-hmm.
And really involved no major character, alive or anytime recently.
Yeah, and it was just basically, well, here's some of this.
And it was a volume long.
What
it is long.
It's amazing.
It is an amazing.
Kagura's ugly cry scene is one of my favorite scenes in the whole.
It's super good.
Can you really save my people?
Yeah, it's amazing, and this arc is such a good example of Oda's knack at world building.
Yeah,
like all across the board. If you want to learn more about this, we have a really great editorial on the website about just this arc.
The overarching history of One Piece and how everything is connected. It's called the One Piece Connection. And it's mostly Skypiea stuff because we learned the most about the One Piece world, to be frank, in Skypiea, and recently a little bit in Zou.
Yeah, a friend of mine was like, "Oh no, you can just skip Skypiea." I'm like, No.
And you also said world building, and that reminds me, I wanted to make sure we didn't really talk about this in any other arc yet. Oda's technology concepts, like the unique technology of Skypiea, it's so cool. Like even like in Shibondi, we got that with like the bubbles, but really that first came into play in Skypiea with all the dials, the different technology of the Sky Islands. It's really cool. It's really cool. It makes it unique.
All right, we're almost here, guys. Number 4, the Marineford and post-war arc. Which I guess we gotta combine here. I mean, the post-war stuff
that's mostly like Luffy's
the flashback. So why don't we go down? Who has a strong opinion about Marineford?
I mean, I
feel like we all
like
should.
It, right?
Yeah. You want to do it, Steve?
Because I honestly, when I think of Marineford, I think of you and I in the early years of the podcast,
recording
in my college dorm room every Saturday night, watching. Well, the first year of that manga with everything that happens in that arc and us kind of like coming together and be like, all right, this just happened. We got to talk about this. And then the following year with the anime and you and I watching those episodes twice in one night and then having to do commentaries for them. I really associate those early years of the podcast with this arc. It was because Alabasta seemed cool at the time. Like, oh, hey, a war. Like Marineford made like Alabasta look like two kids just pushing each other in the schoolyard. Like, you do something. No, you do something. You do something. This dwarfed that. And of course, it was a lot of returning characters. Like, we got to see
a lot. Like,
so many we haven't seen since, like, East Blue.
This is
for the future for the series.
It's almost like a warm-up for this final war that I am most certain is going to happen.
Although this is going to look like two kids pushing themselves on the playground compared to that.
Quit it!
So it look like two ants pushing at themselves in the playground.
Well, ants are pretty strong.
And to think about the emotional impact of a character finally dying and then being two characters and being the main character's brother and like the strongest pirate in the world, the way it shakes up the world. You never thought Oda would actually do it. But I think we were actually coming around to maybe accepting that death might be even possible in One Piece. Like, this is the one time that it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Yeah, if there's anything that makes me like such a staunch defender of why he doesn't kill people, it's this arc, because the deaths have way more impact than they would in other series. I mean, I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah, I love the hell out of this arc, and part of it is just seeing every single character.
Oh man, and let me tell you, if you haven't read this in the manga or anime only, you're missing out, because boy, this is Oda really worked himself to the bone on this. Every single page is basically like a double spread.
While he was
nothing
working
but
on
action.
While he was working on Strong World.
So
it's like, and I mean, they're shorter chapters, but every page is a 2-page spread, and there are all these like huge epic ones, like the Kuzan waterfall thing, tsunami thing,
or even where it's just nothing but pirates fighting.
Yeah,
and
silence in the
the introduction of so many powers. So many
it's setting a world up.
Yeah,
more.
It's more world building with not even actually going anywhere specific.
Yeah,
like the advent of well, I guess we already saw prehistoric devil fruits, but no, there's mythical devil fruits. There's
the Phoenix, Marco, Ed Blaylock, the Ed Blaylock fruit. The golden Buddha.
Blackbeard's reveal. The fact that devil fruit powers can be stolen. Like it's there's so much about this. It's super dense, and I think we should talk a little bit about Luffy's history.
Yeah, we should.
The post-war stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it sets up another thing where especially when you read the manga, it's like you forgot Luffy didn't really get a flashback. You start the series when he's a child, and this is the time that shows like what motivated him to be a pirate in the first place. That fact that Garp was trying to turn him into Marines, and him meeting Ace for the first time.
Yeah,
and then Sabo, his new brother, which was like, where'd that come from? And Dadan. Yeah, Dadan's
I'm such a fan of Dadan.
Dadan's amazing. But the fact that like Ace actually gets some backstory here is good because, boy, I never really understood the appeal of Ace because he was just sort of like, hey, I'm this cool character who has fire powers. He
was cool.
He has freckles.
Yeah. And, I was, it was like, okay, whatever. He's a Poochie. He's a popular character who gets, he gets all the love for no reason. But I do like the flashback a lot, and I feel like that does flesh him out. He's still Poochie, but he's our Poochie.
And I really love this flashback in the anime. Like, I really love this flashback in the anime, even though it's slow and they added like a 2 or 3 episodes of filler in it. Especially the early episodes, or even the final couple of episodes where you see Ace and Luffy growing up together and saying goodbye to Dadan and stuff like that. It's beautiful in the anime. Like it's really moving.
Yeah, those were awesome episodes too, and especially voice acting wise, it was really cool that they got Naruto's voice actress to voice.
Yeah. I was hoping she'd come back to do the adult one too.
That would have been confusing.
Well, Luffy has Mayumi Tanaka,
Luffy is an exception. You can't always pull that off.
I didn't get to say anything about the war itself. I think there's a couple things I think are super cool. Like I think it's cool how we get to know the Whitebeard pirates throughout this fight.
That's true.
Like they just start to feel like friends who have always been there by the end, even though we're just meeting them. A lot of them for the first time here, and it's a fairly short.
Pain.
It's a fairly short arc. It's like 3 volumes for the
yeah,
war.
It is. Yeah.
And I love the Blackbeard ending with Blackbeard showing up is so perfect.
Yeah.
Like because I spent that whole arc just thinking like. How is this going to end? Like if the pirates win, do the Marines dissolve? If the Marines win, what? Like I'm just trying to figure out.
It gives it that like dark, scary, ominous, thing. Like whoa, Blackbeard.
It's just when things go bad to worse to worse to worse.
Just from a storytelling perspective, I'm trying to think of like how either outcome could make sense. Like what would happen if this person wins? What happens if the pirates win? It's like oh no, Blackbeard wins. It's
Let's move on to number. I want to get the last 3 in here too. So let's move on to number 3, and that's Alabasta, which I'm a little sad this isn't even higher. But
what is number 3?
Number 3. It's pretty high.
That's good. That's fair.
I mean, I love it. I think it was exactly my number 3.
So who would like to start with Alabasta here? Anyone chomping at Alex? Alex is dancing. So
Alabasta. Baroque Works is my favorite group of villains by miles. Actually, they're so diverse and so wacky, and they all have cool powers, and they all seem to pose a threat. And this, to me, is like what I consider like a really great, like front to back, like flagship One Piece story arc.
Absolutely,
it's got it's got mystery, and it's got political intrigue. It's got the best fights in the series, I think. Per crew member.
I think everyone had a great fight this arc.
Even Nami had a great fight.
Yeah. Which is you don't really see anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah, I want to say something real quick. I just thought about this. I think Alabasta is the first arc where One Piece became cinematic.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah, because like everything before. Yeah, it's very epic.
That's why they tried to make it into a movie.
I mean, he might, judging from how where Oda pulls his references from, I imagine he watched a lot like Lawrence of Arabia right before watching this movie, which explains because that movie is cinematic and gorgeous. But like the wide vistas, the journey across the desert when they get to like rain diners or when they get to Alabarna.
Well, you have to go through a lot of cities too.
Right, and so like even though it's only an island, it felt like a world.
Oh yeah, no. Well, it's a whole country. Oh, I mean, which is funny because Dressrosa is a country, but this actually feels like a country. There's
Dressrosa is like a big city, basically.
yeah. I feel like Dressrosa is sort of Alabasta light. There's so much in Alabasta that it hits all the right notes, and I feel like it's sort of like lightning in a bottle where you try to recapture that, but I don't think you'll hit all those right notes. Like even Vivi is a very, very strong character. I used to not really enjoy Vivi a lot because I thought she was sort of one note, but her resolve and the things that she goes through to protect her country are so amazing and makes her, a great One Piece character.
And there's such great payoff in Alabasta too.
Absolutely, that's where my mind goes first. It's like because we were watching that clip in our other panel of Luffy being Crocodile, and obviously that scene is amazing because the music is amazing and everything.
Oh God,
and like. Yeah, that's another one of my like standout favorite like scenes in the anime is not just Luffy beating Crocodile, but then like we cut to like Vivi seeing Crocodile flying up in the air, and her eyes are wide like, oh my God, is this really happening? And then like she's remembering like Luffy like saying goodbye to her like in the middle of the arc, like we're gonna go get that crocodile, and like it's like holy crap, it's finally happened. We've finally beaten Crocodile after like. How long is the Baroque Works saga? Like 80 episodes?
It starts at volume 10 and ends at volume 24, I think. So it's 14 volumes.
Well, I mean, that's Baroque Works, but
the whole when you first hear about Baroque Works to when you beat the guy at the head of it,
which I think is great because it's such a slow burn. It's such like a slow sort of thing. Like, oh well, this is something that's going on in the background, but in the meantime, here's some stuff that's going on in the present. Like,
and even crazier is that you have those even bigger stories happening right when you come out of Alabasta into Giant.
Right, and Alabasta is where all of this comes to a head. And
how great of a villain is Crocodile?
He's such a great villain.
It's almost comical, like how much he has like a backup plan for everything. Like it's not even just the bomb, like where she cuts the core on the bomb. Oh, but surprise, it's also a time bomb. But like even when he's like fighting Luffy, he's got his hook and he's got another hook under that hook, and then Luffy breaks the hook and he's got a knife.
Yeah, and turns out he's got another knife underneath that knife.
It's just one of those
it's like Exhibit pimped out his hook.
Between
I heard you like hooks, so I put a hook underneath your hook and a knife under that hook.
I feel like this stretch of One Piece, like between like Alabasta, Skypiea, and Enies Lobby, like Oda was so good at those like impossible situations where the villains felt or the challenge ahead just felt so astronomical that it just feels like almost like legitimate miracle when the heroes pull it off. Even though it's a work of fiction, it feels impressive that the characters succeed.
Yeah. So we have around 10 minutes to go through the final
10 years
two.
ago, this was the arc.
Yes. So let's go to our number 2, the Arlong Park arc.
Yay.
So who here is disappointed that this isn't number 1? Just Alex?
Number
Just
one
Alex?
is now.
Okay. Well, Alex, I want you to explain. Why is this your favorite arc?
Because it's the first. Like this is the first time that One Piece enters this otherworldly feeling that you get. Like it's the first. I mean, like Baratier is the first time Oda really gets his stuff together. But the Arlong Park arc is the first time you get this really heart-wrenching, completely heart-wrenching backstory. It's the first arc that has perfect pacing, perfect artwork. Like this, before this, Oda was sort of spotty with his action scenes, and they're well paced. You can tell what's going on. They're fantastic, and this is the first arc that you really get a sense of what kind of a person Luffy is, what lengths he's willing to go to for the sake of his own crew.
I fully agree it's the first, but first doesn't necessarily mean the best.
No, it doesn't necessarily mean best, but it's not over long. It's a perfect amount. Like it's a very concise story. And it has just. What a great villain. What a great villain, this guy.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah, and so far throughout that series, we just had pirates that just, they're bad because they're bad. Arlong had like a 401k plan of how he wanted to be a villain.
It's more Kuro, but
And it introduced the Fishman, which a cool factoid was Oda wanted to introduce Fishman in chapter 1, and his editor at the time was wait for that,
That's better.
build it up, wait for it. I just think back to just watching these anime episodes when I was finally going past in the anime, just seeing things for the first time, and I got up to the Arlong arc, and it was like, I gotta watch another episode. Where is this going? It was so addictive. It was, it's such a good story, and there's so much mystery to it that just gets unraveled. Like Nami's backstory is fascinating. She has my favorite backstory because you think, oh, she's a thief, and I guess you think she's like the Fujiko from Lupin to the Straw Hat Crew, where she's a girl, she's in business for herself.
Or Bulma, where she's just nagging the crew constantly. Yeah.
But then first of all, it turns I guess she's with these bad guys because she likes money. No, she's just trying to get as much money as she can, is because years ago, this bastard killed her mother right in front of her and said, "Oh, hey, you're pretty good at making maps. Well, you're going to work for me now.
Yeah, one of the
and if you don't, I'm going to kill everyone in your village."
Yeah, one of the strongest women in the series too.
It's and then the only way you get out of it is if you collect this amount of money, and then I'll let you go. That was her motivation for everything, for being a thief, and she was trying so hard to keep it together. Such a strong woman, and then it got to the point where it was nothing she could do. Arlong was just screwing her over. She couldn't win, and that's when, because she was so independent, she didn't want to be involved with the Straw Hats. She stayed out of this, and just got to the point where she broke down, and that's when Luffy, who never lost faith in her, was there for her. It's such a good arc about friendship. It's amazing.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Real quick.
So don't be mad at me that I ranked it number 2. I love it.
No. If the next arc didn't exist, this would certainly be the number 1 arc, no question.
Yeah.
But I think
It's a tough choice for me.
Yeah, I get it. But this is the first time the crew actually fully came together as a crew, because they just got split up doing Bar TA, and then you see Usopp pull his weight. You see Sanji, what he's capable of, what Zoro's capable of, and Nami, who finally is the last missing key. And it's now we can sail. Now we got a crew. Now we got a venture. Let's do this thing.
anyone?
I mean, Arlong's a great arc. I like Genzo and Nojiko a lot. Obviously, the march to Arlong Park and the Nami
Man
stabbing
after my own
herself,
heart.
Nami stabbing her tattoo, and Luffy stopping her. That whole scene, obviously, one of the best. The coming out of the rubble and I'll always be your friend, and
I'm almost surprised I don't rank this number 1, because the March to Arlong Park is my favorite scene in all of One Piece.
I think
Just because your favorite scene doesn't mean it has to.
Yeah, but also I think about when Luffy rose from the rubble of Arlong Park. That's such a moment, and it's unreal. Like what I felt at once Arlong was finally defeated. It was this big sigh.
Yeah, I think this is very personal for a lot of people who started with the series from the beginning because of nostalgic reasons.
Yeah.
Like this is because the next, I know exactly what the next thing that we're going to
There's
get to
literally only 1 arc left.
Yeah, and actually it's funny because we have 10 minutes left and we're going to need that 10 minutes to talk about it, I think.
Yeah, let's get to it. Number 1, anyone could guess? Water 7 NES Lobby. So Ed, you seem to.
The reason I think that this is number 1 over Arlong Park is because Arlong Park is great at what it is, and Water 7 and Annie's Lobby is great at being so many different things. It starts off being this crime mystery thing about Robin being taken, the city of Water 7 being in an uproar over this sort of like a noir film, and then it turns into this siege and rescue, and you get the history of Robin, which ties into the world government, and it tells so many satisfying stories and wraps them up at the end. And then to have the death of the Going Merry is one of the most impactful scenes. And you never thought you'd cry over a boat, but in One Piece, hey, anything's possible, And it does so many different things so well that it can't be anywhere else but number 1.
For me, at least, Water 7 and my favorite arcs in general in One Piece are the ones where Oda could show off his intricate storytelling ability. Which is why I think Dressrosa was kind of disappointing, because you kind of expected that there. But with Water 7, he plants this stuff, even in the Davy Back and Skypiea arcs. The Klabaterman, just Robin's growth as a character in general. And there's so much payoff in Water 7, and there are so many surprises in Water 7. And the manga just looks really, really nice artistically. And even the anime in Water 7 is just perfect. And for me, I think there's a nostalgia to it, too. I don't know, for some reason, just Water 7 is where I'm like, okay, I loved this series before. Now I might need to make a podcast about it.
Oh, for sure. I remember reading this weekly, and every single week was so exciting.
Yeah.
This was the best time to be a One Piece fan.
I'm sure.
Reading it week to week, all of it. Like nothing really felt too.
Enies Lobby at all too?
There's some bits in Enies Lobby that I thought kind of dragged a little bit, but on it.
Yeah, the anime had more.
Yeah, but
anime is a different story.
But honestly, like there's so many elements here that like this is a great example of Oda putting a whole lot into a story arc and really nailing the execution, really nailing it emotionally and otherwise. So many mysteries unfold, and so many great. It's so funny because a lot of people, when you ask them, Water 7 and Enies Lobby, what particular character is this arc about? People could say it's Robin, people could say it's Usopp, people could say it's Frankie, people could say it's about the Mary. It's about all of those, all of those characters, and
or expand them.
See, that's why I don't really dig the arc as much as I would put my number one because of the villain.
I like Spandam.
Hold on. I love CP9. The CP9 reveal is amazing, but as far as villains go, since Lucci's sort of just a henchman, I've warmed up to him a lot, but I don't like him as much as
that's the best thing about it. That Spandam is the worst person on the planet, and he's the boss. And that's kind of how like terrible people are.
And
like,
also,
they don't lift a finger. They just
Also, I really like Lucci because he's like Tommy Lee Jones in The Fugitive.
Yeah.
Oh yeah! Wow, now I appreciate this arc more.
I'm just here to rescue my friend. I don't care.
Spandam's one of my favorite villains.
I love Spandam
too. In the way that I'm not as into Wapple. Like Spandam's the douchey villain that I like. Like he's the one that I think is very fun to watch. I love his voice in the dub.
Also, he looks like Mick Foley as Mankind. So, as a wrestling fan,
yeah.
I mean,
because
and he has purple hair.
Yeah, going back to
hair.
sort of my. I was talking about how there are certain like checkpoint arcs in One Piece. Like there's Arlong, and then there's Alabasta, which is like the country scale version of the Arlong arc almost, and then Enies Lobby, which is the even bigger version of that, and then Marineford, which is it's bigger, but with a twist, which is why that works. But this is the like Rule of Thirds. Like here's the biggest version of the classic One Piece story that we can tell, and he nails it so much. This is I think of this as the arc. This arc is the reason why we're all still One Piece fans in my mind. That's definitely the I Want to Live scene is my favorite scene in the series, and that was the moment where I was like, I am going to love this series for the rest of my life.
So much payoff in this arc. We were talking about payoff earlier. So much payoff, even before the arc ended. Like except the I Want to Live scene, which is probably one of the most iconic scenes in the series. It's so much payoff because for so long you're like, Robin, just stop taking this burden and like just let them save you. We were working towards that. Also, just art-wise, this was when I truly think this was when Oda really got it.
Yeah, definitely.
His color spreads just took this turn. Like I think once he started coloring in the sky, no, because right around this time, like Water 7 into Enies Lobby, his color spreads were phenomenal. So like, and even like the artwork in the manga is really good. Still very tight line work, a lot of details. He did a lot of cross hatching and stuff. Really good stuff.
And just to say a little bit about the very end of the arc, is that it's this incredible one chapter between Ace and Blackbeard, which is a tremendous fight just on its own, and it's told in such a concise manner, but it so perfectly sets up Marineford and where we're going from here, that like it felt like such an epic moment at the time that you could hardly wait for what was coming next.
I think the death of the Going Merry is perfect on multiple levels. Like not only is it really sad, but it's sad at a point where we're cheering for victory after having beaten the bad guys, and then we're going to be having like a party for like 10 episodes after that. But Matt, you get both of those feelings perfectly. You feel that victorious, like, yes, we did it. And then the death of a friend, which is it's just like the ultimate like bittersweet moment, which is something that One Piece is just so good at.
I can't bring up this arc without bringing up, I think, a keystone in which a lot of people forget about because there's so many great moments. But you mentioning the death of a crew member in the Going Merry, well, you have the reunion between Luffy and Usopp, which I think is my favorite.
Yeah,
That's-
and the fight and everything with
yeah,
that.
like Usopp's character
We
development.
barely
is,
talked about Usopp.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
I mean, you've all read it.
you've read it.
You know what we're talking about.
So yeah, just to round off, that is our list of the arcs of consequence. You could follow us at OnePiecePodcast.com. Ed, where are all the places people can find us?
OnePiecePodcast.com, Twitter.com, YouTube.com, Facebook.com/OnePiecePodcast. Email us at OnePiecePodcast@gmail.com. We're on Skype at OnePiecePodcast. Subscribe on SoundCloud, subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes.
And if you like this episode, this panel.
This panel.
Sorry. We have a 2-part Arcs of Consequence episode.
Where we go into this triple the amount of time, I think?
Yeah, we really go in depth, and we talk about way more of the elements of the arcs.
So you can check that out. That's on our SoundCloud
The
page.
6-hour version.
So thank you all for sticking around. My name
Yes,
is
thank you.
Zach. This is...
My name is Ed.
My name is Alex.
My name is Steve.
Brian.
Damn.
And thank you for coming. Thank you
Yeah,
for staying
thank
for the
you.
whole
Thank
thing.
you very
Yeah,
much.
Thank you
Hope you guys enjoyed your con.
This has been episode 440 of the One Piece podcast for the week of October 17th, 2016. We have less than 10 episodes left for this year, believe it or not. Things are going quick here.
Yeah, we need to get Greg on before the end of the year.
Yeah.
It's always got to recap his year of One Piece.
He's been having an exceptionally busy year this year, which is why we haven't had him on as much. But yeah, usually we have an end of year recap with him, so hopefully we could get him on in December. I want to remind everyone, ACH will be on the show on November 7th for the full show. Next week we have Godswill Ugwa from FUNimation. We're going to be talking about the latest chapter, 843, the latest episode, 761. You won't want to miss that. And we have a lot more other cool things coming on our website and on our podcast. So please keep an eye out at OnePiecePodcast.com. Also, please support us at our store and on Patreon at patreon.com/OnePiecePodcast. An exclusive episode should be coming out around the end of the month, so that's coming up in the next week or two. So keep an eye out for that. If you're a Patreon subscriber, $10 and over. I have a lot of outtakes that have been building up, so hopefully I will get that out before the end of the month as well. I think that's everything. Sam, where could the good people find you?
They can find me on Twitter at Lucky Chainsaw, and they can find me on the One Piece podcast doing the anime recap every week, and they can find me on AnimeNewsNetwork.com doing the daily streaming reviews for One Piece and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Both great shows, if I do say so. Ed, where could the good people find us?
Well, you are Zach_Logan on Twitter. I am Edward E. Festizio. The podcast can be found at OnePiecePodcast.com, Twitter.com, YouTube.com, and Facebook.com/OnePiecePodcast. Our Skype name, OnePiecePodcast@gmail.com is our email address. Reddit.com/r/OnePiecePodcast. Leave us some peace together there. Subscribe on SoundCloud. Subscribe on Google Play. Subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, or call us on our phone number. Zach?
That phone number is 347-497-MAJI.
Maji.
That phone number again is 347-497-6254. Call anytime.
Anytime.
With your questions, your comments, and your theories, we will see you next week with an episode with Funimation's Godswill Ugwa and, as I said, Chapter 843 and Episode 761. But until then, my name is Zach.
And my name is Ed.
We'll see you next week, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
See ya.